"Your dress would distract people," my son said. Daniel was standing in his kitchen with one hand wrapped around a coffee mug he hadn't touched. I had brought 2 dresses, one navy and one blue, because I thought we were deciding what I would wear to his wedding. For a second, I waited for the rest of the sentence. Distract people from what? The cake? Their assigned seats? The legal definition of marriage? The deep blue dress hung from the back of a chair, still inside its clear garment bag. Daniel could see the color through the plastic. He had picked it out for me himself 6 years earlier, when I'd forgotten there were shades between funeral black and old dishwater gray. "I can wear the navy," I said. He looked toward the doorway, though no one else was home. "It's not really the color." That was when I understood we weren't discussing a dress. I put my hand on the chair because the room had shifted half an inch under my feet. "What time is the ceremony, Daniel?" He rubbed his thumb over the handle of his mug. "Mom, what time?" It's gotten very small. I stared at him. For 6 months I had helped plan a wedding that had apparently become too small to hold the groom's mother. 7 months earlier, Daniel called me on a Tuesday night and asked if I was sitting down. Nobody asks if you're sitting down before telling you anything ordinary. They ask that before announcing an engagement, a medical diagnosis, or the price of a replacement transmission. I was standing at the sink in my socks, scraping dried oatmeal from a bowl I had no memory of using. "I can sit," I said. "Should I also remove sharp objects from the room?" He laughed, but it came out breathless. Then he told me he had proposed to Elise. I sat so quickly I nearly missed the chair. I liked Elise. I want that understood. She wasn't warm in the way I was used to, but she wasn't cold either. She was composed. Even her hair seemed to have been given the day's schedule in advance. She worked in corporate communications, which Daniel once explained to me for 10 minutes before I said, "So she tells companies what they meant to say after they say the wrong thing." He told Elise that, and she laughed hard enough to snort. I liked her immediately after that. Daniel had met her at a friend's dinner 2 years earlier. He came to my house the next day pretending he needed my ladder. "You live in a building with maintenance staff," I said. "I might want my own ladder. For what?" He stood in my garage looking at a rake. "Do you think I talk too much when I'm nervous?" That was how I learned there was a woman. After the proposal, he brought Elise over for champagne. I kept a bottle in the refrigerator because my sister Ruth believed every household should be prepared for either very good news or a difficult Wednesday. The label was dusty, and the cork came out with less of a pop than a tired sigh, but nobody complained. Elise held out her hand. The ring was narrow and bright, tasteful enough to have its own posture. "It was his grandmother's diamond," she said. "My mother-in-law would be thrilled," I told her. "She always said Daniel had the best hands in the family." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "No one ever knew." Elise laughed. Daniel watched her laugh, and his whole face changed. That was what convinced me. He loved her enough to become quiet while someone else was interesting. We toasted in my kitchen. Elise said they wanted something intimate and elegant, not a production. Daniel nodded as if large weddings had always offended him personally, though I had once seen him dance the worm at a reception for people he barely knew. "What does intimate mean?" I asked. "We don't know yet," Elise said. "Maybe 60. "Then don't invite more than 60. She glanced at Daniel. "Your mother makes things sound easy. My mother thinks most problems can be solved with index cards and enough butter." "That is not true," I said. "Some problems require masking tape." At first, my part in the wedding was small. Daniel called to ask for addresses. He had somehow reached 39 without learning that his Aunt Marjorie's legal first name was not Marjorie. "It's Elaine," I told him. "Then why does everyone call her Marjorie?" "Because she hated Elaine." "Why Marjorie?" "She liked it." "That's allowed?" "Apparently." "Put Elaine on the invitation unless you want her arguing with the mailman." 2 days later, Daniel asked whether his cousin Peter was still speaking to Marjorie after the Easter ham incident. "The incident was not about ham," I said. "It happened over a ham. Most family arguments happen near food. That doesn't make the food responsible." I made him a list. Not because he couldn't have called everyone himself, but because it took me 20 minutes and saved him 3 days of confusion. That was how it started. A question here, a favor there, each one light enough to carry without noticing. My arms were getting full. Elise's parents lived outside Philadelphia. I met them at an engagement dinner in a private room where the napkins were so stiff they could have defended themselves in court. Charles Mercer wore silver cufflinks and spoke in gentle, complete paragraphs. Diane Mercer touched my wrist when she greeted me and said, "We've heard so much about you." The sentence was kind. It still made me wonder what category the information had fallen under. Diane was lovely in a careful way. She asked about my late husband, Frank, and listened without giving me the soft, slanted face people use when they want credit for remembering you're a widow. She told me she had lost her brother the year before. For several minutes, we spoke honestly. Then the waiter brought wine. Daniel returned to the table, and everybody straightened. During dinner, Charles asked Daniel where he'd learned to cook. Daniel said, "Mostly on my own." I looked at him. He caught my eye and added, "Mom taught me some basics. For 3 years after college, that man called me every time chicken behaved unexpectedly. I could have told the table about the evening he tried to rinse ground beef in a colander. I didn't. I smiled and buttered my roll. On the drive home, he called me. "You were quiet tonight." I was eating. You know what I mean. I did, but I let the silence stretch until he filled it. Charles is a little formal. He asked about my garden for 15 minutes. He was being polite. So was I. Daniel exhaled. "I just want this to go well." It did go well. I know. I'm saying there are a lot of different personalities. This was Daniel's favorite phrase when he wanted one person to become smaller for the comfort of another. Different personalities. It could mean Marjorie had insulted a hostess, Peter was drinking too much, or I had told a story with an ending. "I behaved myself," I said. "I didn't say you didn't. You called to tell me I was quiet, then sounded relieved. I'm not doing this with you. You called me." He made a frustrated noise, and I smiled despite myself. Daniel had inherited Frank's belief that ending a conversation was a form of winning. The next morning, he texted to ask if I still had the large white serving bowls from his father's retirement dinner. I had them. Of course I had them. By spring, the wedding had developed departments. There were flowers, rentals, transportation, a rehearsal dinner, a welcome gathering, and something called a farewell brunch, which sounded less like breakfast than a ship leaving port. Elise was efficient but overextended. She would send me a message at 6 in the morning asking whether Marjorie would eat sea bass, then apologize at noon. I told her Marjorie would eat anything if it came with lemon and an opportunity to criticize the portion. Elise replied with 3 laughing faces. Then she asked if I could confirm dietary restrictions for Daniel's side. I did. I never thought of it as work. Not then. It felt good to be useful without being in charge. I had no interest in choosing flowers or inspecting place cards. I just wanted Daniel's day to feel settled around the edges. There were moments when Elise surprised me. At a bakery tasting, the woman helping us kept directing every question to Diane, though Elise was paying. After the 3rd interruption, Elise set down her fork and said, "My mother is not marrying Daniel, despite what he may secretly prefer." Diane laughed. Daniel nearly choked on lemon cake. Later, Elise wrapped 2 extra slices in napkins and put them in my purse because I had mentioned Ruth was recovering from dental surgery. "She can freeze them," Elise said. "She'll eat them tonight with one side of her mouth." I respect that. I wanted us to become family. Maybe that made me eager. Maybe eager people volunteer for their own disappointment because they mistake access for belonging. In May, Daniel asked if I could help with the patio behind his townhouse before Elise's relatives came to visit. Frank had built planters there years earlier, and after he died, Daniel let them fill with dead stems and bottle caps blown in from the alley. I spent a Saturday pulling weeds while Daniel scrubbed the table. Elise appeared with sandwiches and announced she had been forbidden from helping because Daniel didn't trust her with pruning shears. "I don't trust anyone who says every plant looks dead," he said. They do all look dead. That one is Rosemary. It looks haunted." I laughed so hard I had to sit on an overturned pot. For an hour we were easy together. The three of us argued about where to hang lights. Daniel played music from his phone. Elise tucked her hair into an old baseball cap and got dirt on her cheek. I looked at them and felt the kind of happiness that carries fear inside it. They had a life I could visit, but never fully enter, as it should be. A mother is supposed to learn the difference between being left behind and stepping back. I thought I was learning. At the end of the day, Daniel hugged me beside the gate. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he said. I kissed his cheek. "You'd pay someone and complain about the price." He laughed, but he didn't disagree. The invitation arrived for Ruth in June. She called me because her last name was misspelled. "Maybe there's another Ruth Corbett with one T," she said. "There shouldn't be. Did yours come?" I was standing in my hallway with the day's mail in my hand. Electric bill, grocery coupons, a catalog for orthopedic shoes that had somehow found me despite my best efforts. Not yet. Probably tomorrow. Probably. The next day brought a dentist reminder. The day after that, a postcard from a real estate agent who wanted to buy my house. A week passed. When I asked Daniel, he said invitations had gone out in batches. Then he asked if I could find out whether Marjorie planned to bring that man she met on the cruise. His name is Stephen. Fine. Is Stephen coming? I'll ask. I did ask. I also checked with Peter, found Diane a florist who could source the right greenery, and agreed to loan Daniel the white serving bowls. My invitation never came. 3 weeks before the wedding, I finally stopped pretending the mail was slow. I called Daniel and told him I needed the ceremony time so I could schedule my hair appointment. He went silent long enough for me to hear traffic through his car speaker. "Can we talk later?" he asked. "That depends. Is the wedding later?" "Mom, I have 2 dresses. I'll bring them tomorrow." He told me not to, which was why I did. Now I stood in his kitchen with the navy dress in my left hand and the blue one hanging behind me, listening to my son explain that his wedding was too intimate for the woman whose bowls were already stacked in his dining room. "I could come just for the ceremony," I said. "I don't need to be in every photograph." He closed his eyes. That hurt more than if he'd raised his voice. "I'm trying to handle this gently," he said. "Then stop. Tell me plainly." He opened his eyes, and for one foolish second, I saw the man who had hugged me beside the garden gate. "Elise and I both think it would be better if you came to brunch the next morning." I looked at the untouched coffee, the spotless counter, and the list taped to his refrigerator in my own handwriting. Then I asked, "Better for whom?" Daniel's mouth tightened. "Better for everyone," he said. Everyone was a useful word. It could hold any number of people while keeping every individual safely unnamed. Is Ruth invited? That's not the point. Marjorie? Mom? Peter? Stephen from the cruise? Stephen is Marjorie's guest, so the wedding is intimate enough to exclude the groom's mother but still has room for a man Marjorie met near a towel folding demonstration. His mug hit the counter harder than he intended. A brown wave climbed the inside and settled without spilling. "Why do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Turn everything into a joke when someone is trying to have a serious conversation." I looked at him. I thought we were choosing between dresses. He pushed away from the counter and walked to the refrigerator. My list was still taped there. Arrival times, phone numbers, who needed a ride from the hotel, which guests had allergies. I had written it in blue ink because black pens disappeared in my house, as if they had unionized. Daniel stared at the list instead of at me. "Elise's family is very reserved," he said. "I've met them." "You met them twice. Were they pretending?" "That's not what I mean." "Then say what you mean." He turned around. "The wedding has a certain feel." "A feel, yes. And I don't match it." "I didn't say that. You said my dress would distract people. I offered to wear the other dress. You said the color wasn't the issue. We are running out of places for the problem to hide." His face changed then, not softer exactly, but more tired. He rubbed both hands over it and leaned back against the refrigerator, covering the corner of my list with his shoulder. It's not one thing. What are the things? You get emotional. At weddings, at family events. I cry at vows and funerals. Sometimes during insurance commercials if the dog is convincing. I don't throw myself onto the floor. You also tell stories. I almost smiled because the alternative was putting my fist through his fruit bowl. What kind of stories? You know, stories about me. I'm your mother. Most of my stories contain you. Exactly. He saw my expression and hurried on. I don't want to spend the whole day worried about what you're going to say, or whether you're going to take something personally, or whether Elise is going to feel uncomfortable in her own wedding photos. There it was. Not a single blow, but several smaller ones laid neatly beside each other. Has Elise said she's uncomfortable around me? She hasn't used those exact words. What exact words has she used? This isn't a deposition. No, it's a conversation you avoided until I carried dresses into your kitchen. Daniel's jaw worked. I could see the pulse in his neck, the same place it had jumped when he was nervous before job interviews, before his first mortgage closing, before asking Elise to marry him. I had spent most of his life interpreting that pulse as a request for kindness. "When did you decide?" I asked. "We've been discussing it." "How long?" "Mom, please." "Before you asked me to handle the guest addresses?" He looked down. "Before I cleaned your patio." "That wasn't for the wedding. It was for her relatives coming to talk about the wedding. You volunteered. You asked. And you said yes." I picked up the navy garment bag. The hook of the hanger had caught around the handle of a drawer, and for one absurd moment it refused to come loose. I tugged. The bag swung and struck the cabinet with a muffled thump. Daniel stepped toward me. "Here, let me. I can manage a hanger. I didn't say you couldn't." He reached anyway. We both grabbed the hook, our hands colliding. He let go first. That tiny retreat nearly undid me. I freed the hanger and laid the navy dress over my arm. The blue one remained on the chair behind me. I could see my reflection in the clear plastic, stretched and dim over the silk. "Was I ever invited?" I asked. He didn't answer. The kitchen clock ticked above the pantry door. Daniel had given it to me for Christmas once, then taken it back when I said it ticked too loudly. I had forgotten where it ended up. "Did you send an invitation and then change your mind?" "We were trying to figure out how to handle it." "That means no. We wanted you included." "In the food preparation." "That's unfair." "In the address list." "Stop it." "In the brunch after the photographs." His voice rose. "You are included in the brunch because you're family. And what am I during the ceremony?" He turned his back to me. I waited. There are silences you offer someone because they need time, and silences you hold because you refuse to rescue them. I had always given Daniel the first kind. That morning, for the first time, I gave him the second. He opened a cabinet, closed it, then said, "It's 35 minutes. "What is?" "The ceremony. It's 35 minutes. And then there's dinner. I don't understand why that one piece has to become the measurement of our entire relationship." I stared at the back of his shirt. A little wrinkle ran under the collar. My fingers actually twitched with the old impulse to smooth it. "Because you removed me from it," I said. He faced me again. "Nobody removed you. We're asking you to participate differently." That was so polished I knew he had practiced it. "Did Elise give you that sentence?" His cheeks reddened. "Do not make her the villain." "I asked you a question. You've never given her a real chance." "I put cake in my purse for her." "That was for Ruth." "She put it in my purse." I was demonstrating affection through accurate reporting. He made a sound halfway between a laugh and a groan, then caught himself. For half a second, we were almost us again. That was the dangerous part of loving someone who had hurt you. The familiar door remained where it had always been. All you had to do was walk through and agree the room had not changed. Daniel lowered his voice. "Can you please just come to brunch? We'll have a nice morning. You can wear the blue dress if you want. After the wedding, after the photographs, after the room had emptied of anyone whose attention I might steal. Will Charles and Diane be there? Of course. Will Marjorie and Stephen? Probably. So everyone from the ceremony will see me at brunch. That's the idea. But the dress won't distract them then. He glanced at it. I saw the answer before he gave it. It's not only the dress, he said. I took the blue garment bag from the chair. At the front door, he followed me closely enough that I could feel him searching for a version of goodbye that would restore him to himself. I know you're hurt, he said. I opened the door. This is not about being ashamed of you. I turned back. Then what would you call it? He had no polished sentence ready for that. The dresses lay across the back seat of my car like two quiet passengers. I sat behind the wheel with the door closed and both hands at 10 and 2, though I was parked. Daniel appeared in the doorway. He did not come down the steps. I started the car. At the end of his block, I realized I had left my purse on his kitchen counter. I nearly kept driving. The thought of going back felt impossible. But so did canceling every card I owned because my son had wounded me before lunch. When I returned, Daniel was still in the doorway holding the purse. I was about to call. I rolled down the window. He brought it to the car and passed it through. Thank you. Mom, can we not make any decisions right now? I set the purse on the passenger seat. What decisions? About the brunch. About everything. Just take some time. He wanted time to do what time had always done for him, soften my anger until it became service. I'll take time, I said. His shoulders dropped in relief. Then he added, the bakery needs the final pastry count by Friday. I looked at him. He must have seen it then. Not all of it, but enough. His relief vanished. I'm just telling you because you've been talking to them. I heard you, and the hotel needs to know about the shuttle. I heard you, Daniel. He stepped away from the car. I drove home carefully. I stopped fully at every stop sign. I let a man in a pickup truck wave me through an intersection, then waited until he waved again because I no longer trusted my understanding of ordinary signals. Ruth was on my porch when I arrived. She lived 20 minutes away and had no reason to be there, which meant I had called her. I found the proof in my phone, a 9-second outgoing call placed from Daniel's driveway. I did not remember speaking. Ruth stood when she saw the garment bags. Oh, she said. That one word held more tenderness than I could bear. Don't, I told her. I didn't do anything. Your face did. What's wrong with my face? It's sympathetic. I can't help the architecture. I unlocked the door and carried the dresses inside. Ruth followed without asking. In the kitchen, she took 2 glasses from the cabinet, filled them with water, then changed her mind and opened a bottle of wine. It's 11:45, I said. I won't tell the authorities. She poured. I hung the dresses over the guest room door. The blue silk caught the afternoon light through the garment bag. It looked brighter in my house than it had in Daniel's, almost defiant. Ruth stood behind me holding both glasses. He told you not to wear it? He told me not to come. Her hand tightened around the stems. I told her what he had said, not every sentence. I left out the stories and the emotions and the part about how long he had known, because those details felt too private to survive another person's reaction. Ruth listened without interrupting. That alone frightened me. When I finished, she set the glasses on the dresser. I'm going to call him. No, I'm not asking permission. Then I'll unplug your phone. It's in my pocket. I'll put you in the microwave. That earned me a brief, furious smile. Then she said, I'm invited. I know, I'm not going. Yes, you are. Vivian, you're not turning my absence into a demonstration. He should look out and see empty chairs. He should look out and know exactly which one he emptied. Yours won't teach him anything. Ruth walked to the window. What are you going to do? I don't know. My phone chimed from inside my purse. Daniel had sent a message. I'm sorry that went badly. I hope after some space you can see we weren't trying to hurt you. Can you call the bakery before 5? Elise thinks 48 pastries should be enough, but I remember you saying Marjorie wanted gluten-free. Ruth read it over my shoulder. 48 pastries. she said slowly. That's intimate. I sat on the edge of the guest bed. A second message arrived. Also, did you confirm Stephen for brunch? I looked at the blue dress, then at the navy one beside it. The compromise Daniel had not even allowed me to make. I typed carefully, using no angry words he could hold up later as the cause of what came next. I will send you the bakery contact, the shuttle information, and every confirmation I have. You may keep the serving bowls through the wedding. I will not make the calls, prepare the brunch, or help you explain why I am absent. If I am too distracting to witness your marriage, I am too distracting to make the weekend feel like home. I read it twice. Then I pressed send. 3 dots appeared beneath my message, vanished, then appeared again. Daniel called. Ruth reached for the phone. I held it against my chest. If you answer, she said, put it on speaker. No. Then I'm going to press my ear against your head. Go open the wine. It's already open. Then find something useful to do with it. She took her glass and went into the hallway, which was apparently as far away as sisterly restraint could carry her. I answered. Daniel skipped hello. What does that mean? It means I'm sending you the information. I understood that part. Then which words are troubling you? All the rest of them. I heard a door close on his end. He was probably in his bedroom now, protecting the kitchen from our conversation. You said you needed space, he continued. That message doesn't sound like space. It sounds like a threat. What am I threatening? To pull out of everything 3 weeks before the wedding. I was pulled out first. No, you weren't. We offered you another way to be involved. You offered me cleanup with pastries. That's not fair. You've said that twice today. Fair seems to be having a difficult morning. He went silent, and I heard his breath move across the phone. I pictured the small line forming between his eyebrows, the one I used to rub away with my thumb whenever he had a headache. Memory can be physically embarrassing. Your body reaches for an old tenderness before your mind remembers it no longer belongs in the room. Elise is upset, he said. What did you tell her? I told her you aren't doing the brunch. Did you tell her why? She already knows why. That wasn't my question. You're putting me in the middle. I looked toward the hallway. Ruth stood there holding the wine bottle by the neck, openly listening. You placed yourself in the middle, I said, because you and Elise communicate in completely different ways. I wasn't aware Elise and I were having a conflict. You told me the decision belonged to both of you. It does. Then there's no middle. You're standing beside your future wife, asking your mother to serve breakfast after being excluded from your wedding. That is such an ugly way to describe it. You're welcome to improve the facts. Ruth lifted the bottle in a silent toast. Daniel lowered his voice. Do you realize how much pressure this puts on us? There it was again. Us, everyone. The wedding. Large, blameless creatures that needed feeding. I will give you everything you need to take over, I said. Nobody will be stranded at a hotel because I'm upset. It's not just information. You know these people. They are your people too. You know how Marjorie gets. Yes. That's why I gave you her legal name. This is not funny. No, Daniel, it really isn't. He breathed out slowly. Can you at least call the bakery? You arranged it. No. Why? Because you know their number, the order, and the deadline, but you already have a relationship with them. I spoke to a woman named Carla twice. We are not exchanging Christmas cards. Ruth covered her mouth. Daniel heard something. Is Ruth there? Yes, did you call her before you sent that message? She was here, so now the whole family knows. One person knows. She's my sister. You told me not to make Elise the villain, but apparently you can tell Ruth whatever you want about me. You are my son, not my supervisor. The sentence landed harder than I intended. Daniel stopped speaking. I almost apologized. The impulse rose clean and automatic. I swallowed it. Finally, he said, "Send the information tonight." I will. And the bowls can stay? Yes. Fine. The word had no gratitude in it. He hung up. Ruth came back into the room. "You should have put it on speaker. You heard every word. I could have heard his side better. You heard enough. I heard him ask you to call a bakery after banning you from his wedding. That's a new level of confidence." I stood and carried both glasses to the kitchen. Mine was still full. "Don't turn him into a monster." Ruth followed me. "I'm not. Yes, you are. I can see you building him a cape. I'm trying to be angry because you won't. I am angry. You're organizing your anger into folders." That irritated me because I had already begun mentally sorting what Daniel needed: bakery, hotel, transportation, guest responses, dietary restrictions, the brunch menu I had drafted and never shown Elise. "It has to be done," I said. "No, it doesn't. I said I would send it. I mean all of it. You don't have to make your exit convenient. I'm not going to punish 30 people to prove I've been wronged. You always do this." "Do what?" "You make sure the person who hurt you has clean towels before you leave." I turned on the faucet, though there was nothing in the sink. Ruth leaned against the counter. She looked more like me when she was angry, which made her especially difficult to dismiss. "Frank used to say the same thing," she said. "My husband did not discuss my towels with you. He said you could turn bleeding quietly into a competitive event." The faucet ran cold over my fingers. I shut it off. That sounds like him. It does. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then my phone chimed. Elise had sent a message. "Daniel says you've decided not to help with the wedding weekend. I'm sorry things became so stressful. I wish we could have found a compromise, but I respect that you need to step back. We will handle everything from here." Ruth read it beside me. "That is corporate communications," she said. "It's polite. It has been reviewed by counsel." I read the message again. A compromise. I wondered what Elise thought had been offered and what she believed I had refused. I could have called her. I could have written, "I brought a navy dress. I asked to attend. Daniel told me not to come." My thumbs hovered above the screen. Then I remembered Daniel saying I was putting him in the middle. If I corrected Elise directly, he would accuse me of creating conflict between them days before their wedding. If I stayed quiet, his version would harden. That was the trap. Daniel had made honesty look aggressive. I typed, "I hope the rest of the planning goes smoothly, and I'm glad you have what you need." It was not the whole truth, but it was the only part I could offer without begging for a place that should never have been negotiable. Ruth watched me send it. "You're protecting him." "I'm protecting myself from a conversation I can't have right now." She did not agree, but she nodded. We spent the afternoon at my dining table. I forwarded emails and copied numbers onto one sheet because Daniel tended to lose information if it arrived in separate messages. I labeled the hotel contact, the shuttle company, the bakery, and the rental office. I noted that Stephen was attending the brunch and that Marjorie needed a ground floor room because she refused to admit stairs bothered her. I removed nothing. I changed nothing. I did not cancel the pastry order or call the shuttle company to say the groom's mother had been declared visually hazardous. At 4:30, I sent the file to both Daniel and Elise. Elise responded, "Thank you, Vivian. This is very helpful." Daniel did not respond. The next morning, Carla from the bakery called while I was watering the rosemary on my windowsill. "Hi, Vivian. I have Elise on the other line, and she's asking about the gluten-free count. You had said 6, but she has 2. 6 is correct." "Oh, good. Can you hold while I connect you?" "No, Carla. Daniel and Elise are handling the order now." A pause. "Everything okay?" "There are people who ask that because they care, and people who ask because a wedding has trained them to expect catastrophe." Carla sounded like both. "Everything is fine," I said. "They have the information." By noon, the hotel had called twice. The rental company emailed about table linens. Each time, I redirected them. By dinner, I understood just how many loose ends had been tied around my fingers. Marjorie called at 7. She did not bother with a greeting either. It was apparently a family trait. "Are you out of your mind?" "Good evening, Marjorie. Daniel says you are refusing to attend the wedding because you don't like the color scheme. I sat down at the kitchen table. That is not what happened. He said Elise asked you not to wear blue, and you made it into a whole issue. I brought a navy dress. Marjorie stopped. I let her have the silence. You did? Yes. Well, maybe it wasn't the right navy. There are hostile navies now. You know what I mean? I truly don't. She sighed into the phone. I could picture her in her apartment, one slipper off, her reading glasses balanced in her hair. Marjorie was 72 and believed diplomacy meant saying the cruel thing in a lower voice. Weddings make people insane, she said. That is not an excuse. It is an atmospheric condition. I am familiar with the weather. Daniel says you pulled out of the brunch. Daniel told me I could not attend his ceremony. Did he use those words? He used several more. What exactly did Elise say? I don't know. Daniel spoke for both of them. Marjorie went quiet again, but this silence felt different, less certain. Then she said, "Wear the navy. Come with me. Let them try to stop us." The image was almost funny. Marjorie marching into a quiet ceremony with Stephen from the cruise, while I trailed behind in disputed navy. No. Why not? Because I'm not sneaking into my son's wedding. You wouldn't be sneaking. Would you announce us? If necessary. That is worse. She exhaled. Then what do you want? The question angered me more than her accusation had. I wanted my son to want me there. You can't force people to give you the version of love you want. No. But I can stop accepting the version that requires me to wait in the kitchen. Marjorie had no quick answer. Finally, she said, "Are you asking me not to go?" "No. I would understand if you were. I'm not turning his wedding into a loyalty test." "Well, that's inconvenient. I'm excellent at tests." Despite myself, I laughed. Her voice softened. "Vivian, this is awful." "Yes, I'm still going." "I know. I'm going to watch him." "That sounds threatening." "It is." When we hung up, I sat alone at the table until the light outside thinned to gray. Daniel had told Marjorie I objected to the color scheme. Elise had written that she wished we could have found a compromise. Somewhere between those two sentences, I had become a woman willing to miss her only son's wedding over fabric. My phone rang again. This time, it was Daniel. "I just spoke to Marjorie," he said. "I assumed I'd be hearing from you. Why did you tell her I banned you?" "Because you did. I asked you to respect one difficult decision." "No. You asked me to help everyone else enjoy the consequences of it." His breath caught, and I knew I had finally said something he could not polish. "I don't recognize you right now," he said. I looked through the kitchen doorway at the guest room, where the blue dress still hung in the fading light. "That may be the first honest thing you've said," I told him. "I'm not sure you've been looking at me for a long time." He said nothing. Then the line went dead. Daniel did not call the next day. Neither did the bakery, the hotel, or the rental company. Apparently, my transfer of information had worked. It was strange how quickly a person could become unnecessary once she stopped volunteering. On Sunday morning, I bought a roast out of habit. Daniel usually came for dinner twice a month, though he had never called it a standing arrangement. Standing arrangements could be declined. Instead, he texted around noon with a question mark, and I replied with whatever time the food would be ready. That Sunday, no question mark came. I seasoned the roast anyway. At 1, I put it in the oven. At 2, I peeled enough potatoes for 3 people. At 2:15, I became angry with myself and put half of them back. Ruth arrived at 4 carrying a grocery bag. I brought a salad. You hate salad. I brought lettuce and a bottle of dressing. I didn't say I was going to eat it. She looked toward the dining room where I had set 3 places. I picked up 1 plate and returned it to the cabinet. Ruth pretended to inspect the wine rack. "Did Daniel invite you to dinner?" I asked. "Not exactly. What does that mean?" "He called me yesterday." I waited. He wanted to know if I could arrive early on the wedding day to make sure Marjorie gets on the shuttle. I put the serving spoon down. "What did you say?" I said Marjorie is 72, not a migrating bird. "Ruth." I also said no. You could have helped her. She doesn't need help. She needs an audience. That is a type of help. Ruth turned to me. He asked if I could check the brunch setup too. I closed my eyes. I told him I was attending as a guest, she said. Then he asked if you had put me up to saying that. And what did you tell him? I said, you have never put me up to anything because you don't trust my methods. That was wise. I thought so. We ate at the kitchen table instead of the dining room. The roast was dry because I had forgotten it while reorganizing a drawer that did not need reorganizing. Ruth poured gravy over hers with the solemn concentration of a person hiding evidence. Halfway through dinner, she said, Peter thinks you chose not to go. I set down my fork. How do you know? He called me to ask whether he should say something to Daniel. About what? He wasn't clear. Peter is rarely clear when clarity might have consequences. What did you tell him? To call you? He hasn't. He probably thinks I warned you. You did, yes, but he doesn't know that. I pushed a piece of potato through the gravy. What exactly did Daniel tell him? That you and Elise disagreed about the dress code, and you decided it would be more comfortable for everyone if you skipped the ceremony. I almost admired the sentence. It preserved my dignity while removing my choice. He made it sound mutual, I said. He made it sound like you developed a sudden fear of beige. I don't fear beige. You should. It spreads. I laughed, then covered my mouth because the laugh had come too close to a sob. Ruth reached across the table. She did not touch my hand. She just placed hers nearby, giving me the option. I turned my palm over and took it. The days before a wedding have their own gravity. Even if you are not invited, everything begins to lean toward the date. Marjorie called to report that her dress had been altered too tightly under the arms. Peter sent a message asking whether the hotel bar stayed open past midnight. Diane Mercer emailed to thank me for the excellent transition notes, which made my absence sound like a change in management. I responded that I was glad the information helped. She wrote back, "We hope to see you soon under calmer circumstances." I did not know what circumstances she believed had occurred. Daniel remained silent until Wednesday evening, when he appeared on my porch carrying no coat despite the cold. I saw him through the window and stayed in my chair for 3 rings of the doorbell. Not to punish him. I needed the time to make sure that when I opened the door, I would not become whichever version of his mother made the moment easiest. He looked tired. His hair needed cutting, and there was a gray shadow along his jaw. "Can I come in? You're already here." That isn't an answer. I stepped aside. He entered but did not take off his shoes. Daniel always removed his shoes in my house, even when I told him not to. The fact that he kept them on said he expected either a short visit or a quick escape. His eyes went down the hallway. The dresses were still hanging over the guest room door. "You left them out," he said. "They haven't done anything wrong." He winced. I didn't come to argue. "Why did you come?" "I need a photograph of Dad." The room narrowed. Daniel looked toward the mantel, where I kept a picture of Frank leaning against the railing of a ferry, his hair blown straight up by the wind. He was 61 in that photograph and laughing at me because I had told him to look dignified. "What for?" I asked, though I already knew. "We're doing a remembrance table." Of course they were. My husband would be welcome at the wedding in a frame. Daniel followed my gaze to the mantel. "Can I use that one?" "No." His expression hardened. "Why not?" "Because it's the only copy I have in that size. We'll return it." "You asked if you could use it," I answered. He looked away. "Do you have another one?" "Yes." I went to the cabinet beneath the bookcase and pulled out the photo box. It was heavier than I expected. Daniel moved to take it from me, but I carried it to the dining table myself. We sat across from each other and looked through photographs of Frank. There he was at his retirement dinner, wearing a paper crown Marjorie had forced onto his head. There he was asleep in a lawn chair with a paperback open on his chest. There he was at Daniel's townhouse, building the planters I had cleaned that spring. Daniel picked up that photograph. This one. He'd like that. It's a good picture. He was proud of those planters. I know. I watched Daniel's thumb move over the edge of the photograph. "Do you?" I asked. His eyes lifted. You let them rot for 5 years. I don't have your talent with plants. Rosemary survives neglect and personal insult. Then why did you come clean them? Because you asked me. He put the photograph down. Everything comes back to that now. What? You helping. You keep saying it like you were keeping a ledger. I never counted any of it until I learned it bought me nothing. I didn't ask you to earn an invitation. No. You let me believe I already had one. Daniel leaned back in his chair. His eyes were red around the rims. I could not tell if he had been sleeping badly or if he had come prepared to cry. Elise hasn't slept through the night all week, he said. I'm sorry. Her mother had to find a caterer for the brunch. Then the brunch is handled. It cost almost 3 times what we planned. You keep describing inconveniences as if I caused the decision that created them, because you know I can't change it now. The words came out before he seemed ready for them. I looked at him. Can't? The seating is done. The numbers are final. Everything is final. A chair can be added. It's not about a chair. No. It's about whether you want me sitting in it. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, my neighbor was dragging an empty trash barrel up her driveway. The wheels knocked steadily over each crack in the pavement. Daniel put his hands in his pockets. I need one thing not to be complicated, he said. My anger thinned enough for me to hear the fear underneath. He was 10 days from marrying a woman he loved. 2 families were converging around him. Every preference had become symbolic. Every small disagreement needed a winner. Daniel had always hated disappointing people, but he hated being seen while doing it even more. So you chose me to remove, I said. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened. He turned from the window. Elise wanted. He stopped. I waited. His face closed again. Elise wanted the day a certain way, he said. She has given up things too. What has she given up? The band she wanted, half the guest list, the outdoor ceremony. Did she give up her mother? That's different. Yes. I mean, her parents are paying for. He stopped again. Money had entered the room, then tried to slip back out before I could identify it. Charles and Diane are paying, so they belong in the photographs. That's not what I was going to say. What were you going to say? He rubbed the back of his neck. They've had expectations from the beginning. I'm trying to keep this from becoming a disaster. Am I the disaster? No, but removing me prevents it. He looked at the photograph of Frank between us. Dad would understand, he said. I stood so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. Do not bring your father into this to agree with you. Daniel flinched. You don't know what he would understand, I continued. He isn't here to tell either of us. But I know he would never sit at your wedding while I was home because my dress had too much color. That is not why you're home. Then why? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I picked up the photograph of Frank by the planters and held it toward him. Take this. Daniel did not move. You wanted your father at the wedding. Take him. I don't want it like this. How do you want it? He finally took the photograph. His fingers touched mine, warm and familiar. I want you to come to brunch, he said. No. Even if nothing else changes? Especially then. Why? Because I will not stand beside a coffee urn while everyone politely pretends I arrived after the important part by accident. It doesn't have to feel that way. It already does. His eyes filled. He looked down at Frank's photograph and blinked until the tears retreated. I wanted to pull him against me. I wanted to tell him we would fix it, that he was tired, that weddings made people insane, that his father would be proud, that his mother could absorb one more injury if it meant he slept that night. Instead, I held the back of the chair until the impulse passed. Daniel walked to the door. When this is over, he said, I don't know how we come back from it. Neither did I, but I knew what he was asking. He wanted me to be frightened enough by the future to surrender in the present. I opened the door for him. You know where I am, I said. He stepped onto the porch with his father's photograph held flat against his chest. Then he turned back. Are you going to tell everyone your version? The truth isn't my version. That's not an answer. I won't make announcements, but I won't lie for you." His face tightened, as though honesty itself had become another expense he had not budgeted for. He left without saying goodbye. I watched him carry Frank down the walkway. At the curb, he paused and looked back at the house, but I had already stepped away from the window. In the guest room, I unzipped the blue garment bag. I had not tried on the dress since bringing it to Daniel's. Maybe I needed proof that it was as dangerous as he claimed. The silk slipped over my shoulders and settled against me with the cool weight of water. I fastened it, went to the mirror, and saw a woman in a beautiful dress, standing alone in a room meant for guests. Nothing about me looked distracting. I looked exactly like someone who had been removed. I stood there until the dress began to feel heavy. Then I unfastened it, stepped out carefully, and hung it back inside the garment bag. The woman in the mirror became ordinary again. Black pants, a white camisole, bare feet with one toenail I had somehow painted darker than the others. My phone rang in the kitchen. For a second, I thought Daniel had come back. Instead, the screen showed Marjorie. "I'm not answering," I told the empty room. She called again. I answered. "Peter wants to know what he should say if people ask where you are. Why would anyone ask him? He's seated with Ruth. What does seating have to do with information? People assume a table is a committee." I zipped the dress. "He can say I'm not attending." That sounds mysterious. It's accurate. He thinks he should say, "You're ill, I'm not ill." He thinks that would be easier. For Peter. For everybody. I sat on the guest bed. Apparently everybody has had a very difficult week. Marjorie ignored that. Daniel says this is a private family matter. Then Peter shouldn't say anything. You know that won't work. If the groom's mother is missing, people will notice. My dress distracts them when I'm there, and my absence distracts them when I'm not. I'm remarkably powerful. This is not the time to discover self-esteem. I smiled despite myself. Marjorie lowered her voice. "Did Daniel come see you?" "Yes." "What did he want?" "A picture of Frank for the remembrance table." There was a silence long enough for me to hear the television in her apartment. "Oh," she said. "He took the one by the planters. I like that one." "So does he." "That's—" She stopped. "What? Nothing." "Say it. That's hard." The word was so plain it went directly through me. "Yes," I said. "It is." After we hung up, I took the blue dress to my bedroom closet. I hung it between two winter coats where I would not have to look at it every time I passed the guest room. The wedding moved closer through other people's voices. Peter called on Wednesday and spent 2 full minutes asking about my garbage pickup before admitting why he had phoned. Ruth says, "You didn't decide to skip the wedding." She's right. Daniel said you and Elise had a disagreement. Daniel told me not to attend. Peter breathed into the receiver. He used those words? He found more elegant ones. Why? He said I would make Elise uncomfortable. You? Yes, Peter. I've been running a secret campaign of unease. I didn't mean it like that, I know. He asked whether I wanted him to speak to Daniel. I said no. Peter asked whether he should still go. I said yes. Are you sure? No, I told him. But go anyway. I could hear his relief. I didn't blame him for it. Peter loved Daniel. He also hated conflict so deeply that once, during an argument over a restaurant bill, he went outside and pretended to receive a work call for 40 minutes. Our family had mistaken avoidance for peacekeeping for generations. On Thursday evening, while the rehearsal dinner was beginning, I heated canned soup and watched a game show with the volume low. I knew what they were eating. I had helped choose the menu after Diane worried the first option was too heavy. I knew there would be tiny crab cakes during cocktails, roast chicken at dinner, and individual lemon tarts that Marjorie would call wasteful before eating 2. At 7:20, my phone lit up with a photograph from Marjorie. Frank's picture stood on a narrow table beside a white floral arrangement and 3 other framed faces. Someone had placed a small candle in front of him. He was smiling beside the planters, work gloves tucked into his back pocket. Behind the photograph, slightly out of focus, I recognized one of my white serving bowls. A message followed. He looks handsome. I enlarged the picture until Frank's face filled the screen. He did look handsome. He also looked alive in a way photographs rarely manage. His eyes were turned slightly away from the camera because I had said something just before I pressed the button. I could no longer remember what. I typed, "Thank you." Marjorie sent another message. "Daniel looks sick." Before I could respond, she called. "I'm in the ladies' room," she whispered. "Then attend to your business. I'm hiding." "From whom?" "Diane keeps asking whether I need anything." "That sounds considerate. She's asked 4 times. It's becoming surveillance." I turned off the television. Why does Daniel look sick? He's pale. Peter spoke to him. I closed my eyes. I told Peter not to. He didn't accuse him. He just asked if you were truly invited. What did Daniel say? That you weren't comfortable with the expectations being my absence. Vivian, I know. In the background, a hand dryer roared. Then Marjorie said, "People are asking about you. What are they being told? That you're not feeling up to the weekend." I stood. Who said that? I heard Diane say it to her sister. Did Daniel tell her that? I don't know. I walked to the sink, though I had nothing to do there. I am feeling perfectly capable of attending my son's wedding. I know. Does Elise know they're saying I'm unwell? I haven't spoken to her. She's surrounded. By whom? Everyone. That's how weddings work. I gripped the edge of the counter. "Don't make a scene," I said. "I'm in a bathroom whispering into my purse. I mean about me, I know what you mean. I won't have them saying I sent you in there as a correspondent. That would imply organization. I came in here to complain about the crab cakes." When the call ended, I carried my untouched soup to the sink. At 8:11, Daniel called. "What did you say to Peter?" "Good evening to you too. Did you tell him I banned you? I told him you asked me not to attend. He confronted me at the rehearsal. He asked you a question." Same thing with Peter. I heard voices behind him and a door closing. Another kitchen. Another hallway. Another room my son needed to enter before speaking honestly to me. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said. "Everybody is tense. Elise is crying, and instead of celebrating, I'm explaining our private conversation. Why are people being told I'm not feeling well? What? Diane told someone I wasn't up to the weekend. I don't know what Diane said. What did you tell Diane? That you decided not to participate. The lie was so clean I nearly missed it. I decided not to work at the wedding I was not allowed to attend. Could you stop saying it like that? How should I say it? I don't know. Maybe acknowledge that you were given a choice." "What choice?" "To be part of the weekend in a way that worked for everyone." I laughed once. There was no humor in it. "You could still come to brunch," he said. "Tell me you want me at the ceremony." He went quiet. "Those are 7 simple words," I said. "Mom. Say them, and I will put on the navy dress. I will sit wherever you place me. I will not tell stories, give a speech, cry loudly, adjust your collar, or appear in a photograph unless someone asks me. Tell me you want me there. You know it isn't that simple. It is exactly that simple. The seating is final. Then say you wish it weren't." A burst of laughter came from wherever he had been standing. I imagined the private room, the stiff napkins, Elise surrounded by people offering careful comfort. I imagined Daniel holding his phone while everyone waited for him to return and become the groom again. "I can't do this tonight," he said. "You called me." "I called because Peter upset Elise." "No. Peter asked a question you couldn't answer without telling the truth. You have made your point. I never wanted a point. I wanted a seat." His breathing changed. "I love you," he said. It was not an apology. It was worse, because I loved him too. "I love you, Daniel." "Then why are you doing this?" I closed my eyes. "Because those 2 things can exist in the same room." He hung up. The next morning, the hair salon called to confirm my Saturday appointment. I had made it weeks earlier, before the dresses, before the kitchen, before I learned intimacy was measured by how easily you could be excluded from it. "Would you like to keep the appointment?" Gloria asked. My hand went to my hair. There was no reason to have it done. No photographs, no ceremony, no need to look like the groom's mother. Yes, I said. Saturday morning, Gloria curled and pinned my hair while the woman in the next chair complained about her husband's retirement habits. Nobody at the salon knew where I was supposed to be that afternoon. For 50 minutes, I was simply a woman getting her hair done. When I returned home, Ruth's car was in my driveway. She was sitting on the porch in jeans, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "You're supposed to be getting dressed," I said. "So are you." "For what?" "I don't know. It felt like a strong opening." I unlocked the door. Ruth followed me inside and set the coffee on the kitchen table. Her wedding clothes hung in a garment bag from the hook behind my front door. "You're changing here?" "No." "Then why did you bring your dress?" So I had the option. "The ceremony starts in 3 hours. I know. You are going. We've discussed this." "We have not discussed you missing it," I decided. "That makes it worse." Ruth looked at me steadily. "I'm not staying because you asked. You did not ask. You have been annoyingly clear about that. Daniel will think I put you up to it. Daniel thinks lettuce is a complete salad. His judgment is compromised." I turned away because my eyes had filled. Ruth softened. "I can go to the reception later. Or not. I'll decide. But I'm not leaving you alone during the ceremony. I don't want a competing event." "Good. I didn't bring balloons. We did not open wine. We did not order a special lunch. I made toast and burned the first 2 pieces." Ruth read the newspaper at the kitchen table while I moved through the house, pretending there were things that needed doing. At 3:30, I went to my bedroom and put on the blue dress. Ruth looked up when I returned. She did not tell me I looked beautiful. She did not say Daniel was a fool. She simply pulled out the chair beside her. I sat. At 4 o'clock, we stopped talking. Somewhere across town, music had begun. Guests were turning their heads. Daniel was standing beside Frank's photograph, or perhaps already at the front, waiting for Elise. I twisted my wedding ring around my finger. I had worn it for 6 years after Frank died because taking it off felt like admitting our marriage had ended when he did. The ring resisted at my knuckle. Ruth brought me a little dish of hand lotion without asking what I was doing. I worked the ring free. The skin beneath it was pale and indented, a narrow band of evidence. I carried it to my bedroom, opened the top drawer, and placed it beside Frank's old watch. When I returned, Ruth glanced at my bare hand. Neither of us said a word. At 4:12, the refrigerator motor shut off. The sudden silence made the house feel enormous. Ruth folded the newspaper along a crease she had already folded twice. I looked at the clock, then away, as if Daniel might feel me watching the minutes from across town. At 4:23, my phone chimed. A message appeared in the family group Peter had created for the wedding weekend. Someone had posted a photograph taken from the back of the ceremony room. I could see rows of shoulders, pale flowers, and Daniel standing beneath an arch beside Elise. She wore a narrow white dress. He was leaning toward her as if listening. They were married. Ruth picked up my phone, turned it face down, and set it beyond my reach. I hadn't decided whether to look at that. Yes, you had. Don't become controlling just because I'm vulnerable. I've been controlling since 1989. Your vulnerability is unrelated. We sat until 5. Then Ruth stood and carried our coffee cups to the sink. The reception begins at 6, I said. I'm aware. You should go. She turned on the faucet. I mean it. So do I. Peter will be alone at the table. He's with Marjorie. That is not the same as company. It is more company than most people can survive. I smiled, but she kept washing the already clean cups. You brought your dress, I said. I brought a possibility. Use it. Ruth shut off the water. Do you want me to go? No. She faced me. I touched my bare ring finger. But I don't want you to stay for me either. That sentence is very inconvenient. I know. She considered me for a long moment. I'll go to the reception, she said. I will eat Daniel's expensive chicken, make sure Marjorie doesn't attack anyone with a butter knife, and leave before they start pretending dancing is mandatory. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you, of course not. And if anyone asks, I'll tell the truth, the concise truth. I make no promises about adjectives. Ruth changed in the guest room. When she came out, she wore a dark green dress and low heels she referred to as her formal, orthopedic compromise. I zipped her back and fixed the clasp on her necklace. The ordinary intimacy of it hurt. This was what I had expected before Daniel's wedding. Women moving through my house half-dressed, searching for earrings, complaining about shoes, asking whether lipstick had gotten on their teeth. Ruth met my eyes in the mirror. "You could still come with me," she said. "No, I know." She left at 5:30. I stood on the porch until her car turned at the end of the street, then went inside and locked the door. The blue dress rustled whenever I moved. I could see why Daniel had remembered it. The color entered a room before I did. Frank had loved that about it. The first time I wore it, he had been dead 9 months. Daniel had taken me shopping because Ruth told him I owned nothing suitable for a charity dinner except widow clothes. He held up the blue dress and said, "This one looks alive." I told him it was too bright. He said, "That's the point." I wondered when the point had changed. At 6, I made scrambled eggs. At 6:15, I threw them away untouched. I changed out of the dress and hung it in the closet, then put on one of Frank's old shirts over my camisole. Photographs continued appearing in the family group. Elise walking down the aisle with Charles, Diane crying into a folded napkin, Daniel and Elise cutting the cake, Frank's framed face on the remembrance table. In one picture, the edge of my white bowl appeared behind a silver tray of bread. I muted the group. At 7:40, Daniel sent me a private message. "We're married. I love you." I read it several times. The first sentence was news. The second was true. Neither touched what had happened between us. I wrote, "I love you too. I hope you and Elise have a beautiful life together." My thumb hovered over the final word, together. I sent it. He did not respond. Ruth returned shortly before 11, carrying her heels in one hand and a slice of wedding cake wrapped in a cloth napkin in the other. "You stole linen," I said. "I rescued cake." The linen became emotionally involved. She dropped into a kitchen chair and flexed her toes. "How was it?" "Do you want the kind answer or the accurate one?" "The short one." "It was beautiful." I looked down at the cake. White frosting, thin layer of lemon filling. "Good. Daniel looked for you." I raised my eyes. "Not openly," she said. He kept looking toward the door during dinner. Every time someone entered, maybe he was waiting for the photographer. He wasn't. I put the cake in the refrigerator. "Did people ask?" "Yes." "What did you say?" "That you were not invited to the ceremony." "Ruth, you requested concise. To whom?" Peter already knew. Marjorie already knew. "A cousin of Elise's asked, and I said you couldn't make it," which is not true. Apparently you wanted different answers for different levels of relationship. I wanted you not to spend the evening prosecuting my case. I didn't. I ate chicken. I danced once with Peter. I told one relative the truth when she said it was a shame you had chosen to miss such a beautiful day. I sat across from her. "What did Daniel say to everyone else? That you weren't feeling comfortable with the arrangements." "The arrangements?" "Yes. That sounds like I objected to the centerpieces." Ruth leaned back. Her face had lost its sharpness. She looked tired and sad. "He gave a speech," she said. "I don't want to hear it." "He thanked Charles and Diane for making the wedding possible." I waited. He thanked Peter for organizing the group photographs. He thanked Marjorie for the toast, although I don't think he had a choice after she gave it. Did she behave? She said marriage requires 2 people who can tell each other the truth, even when it ruins dinner. I closed my eyes. "She did not mention you," Ruth added quickly. "She didn't have to." "No." "Did Daniel thank you?" "He said it was good to have family there." That was an answer. Ruth reached for the cake, opened the container, and took a bite with my clean fork. "He didn't thank me," she said. "He didn't thank you. He didn't mention the brunch, the addresses, the patio, or the woman who knew Stephen needed a shuttle. He was giving a wedding speech, not an inventory." "I know." She took another bite. "Was Elise happy?" I asked. "Yes, I think so. She looked happy when she forgot people were watching. That sounded like the Elise I knew. Then that's enough." It wasn't, but I needed the night to end somewhere. The following morning, I woke before 7 with the conviction that I had forgotten something important. For several seconds, I believed I needed to prepare the brunch. I pictured the menu automatically: egg casserole, fruit, coffee, the little pastries Daniel had asked me to count. Then I remembered I had nowhere to be. At 10:30, Marjorie sent a photograph of the brunch tables. The caterer had used my bowls for fruit. Diane stood in the background speaking to a server. Daniel and Elise were nowhere in the frame. Marjorie wrote, "Food is acceptable. Coffee is weak." I did not answer. The house felt too still, so I stripped the guest bed, washed sheets that were already clean, and moved Frank's watch from the drawer into the wooden box where I kept his cufflinks. My ring remained where I had placed it. At noon, the doorbell rang. Peter stood on the porch with a covered plate. "I brought you brunch." "You did not. I brought Marjorie brunch." She redirected it. I let him in. He set the plate on the counter and stood with his hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the eggs, for going. You were supposed to go, I know, but it felt complicated?" He smiled faintly. "That word has been getting a workout." I poured coffee. Peter sat at the kitchen table and told me about everything except the ceremony. The shuttle had arrived 12 minutes late. Stephen had turned out to be an excellent dancer. Marjorie complained that the hotel pillows were decorative rather than functional. Then Peter said, "Daniel asked whether I thought you'd forgive him." I held the coffee pot over my cup until it nearly overflowed. "What did you say? That he should ask you? Good. He said you weren't taking his calls." "He hasn't called." Peter frowned. "He said he tried." I checked my phone even though I knew there were no missed calls. "When?" "I don't know." That was the first moment I understood Daniel might be lying even when there was no longer a wedding decision to protect. He and Elise left for their honeymoon that afternoon. I knew because the family group filled with airport pictures and jokes about lost luggage. I muted it again. For 10 days, Daniel and I did not speak. I expected the silence to feel clean after so much arguing. Instead, it collected in the house. I noticed it at dinner, when no question mark appeared on my phone. I noticed it at the grocery store when I reached for the coffee Daniel liked and put it back. I noticed it when I watered the rosemary and remembered his patio. People called. Marjorie called too often. Peter called once and spent 12 minutes discussing weather. Diane sent a formal thank you note for the serving pieces and wrote that Elise would return them after the trip. Ruth came by without warning and stopped asking whether I was all right. Nobody said what happened next. They were waiting for me to become reasonable, or Daniel to become sorry, or time to turn what he had done into one of those family stories everyone retold with softened edges. The Bowles came home on a gray Tuesday afternoon. When the bell rang, I expected a delivery driver. Elise stood on the porch, holding one white bowl against her hip and a wrapped platter balanced on her other arm. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot. She wore no makeup, and the new ring beside her engagement ring looked almost too bright for her tired hand. "I thought Daniel was returning these," I said. He went back to work. I stepped aside. Elise carried the dishes to the kitchen and set them carefully on the counter. We both looked at the bowl as if it had requested the meeting. "Thank you for lending them," she said. "You're welcome." The brunch turned out well. I heard. She smoothed the edge of the cloth around the platter. "I'm sorry you weren't there." I did not answer. Elise finally looked at me. "I just wish you'd let me find you something else to wear." "I had something else to wear," I said. Elise's fingers stopped moving on the cloth. "What?" I brought Daniel 2 dresses, the blue one and a navy one. She stared at me as if I had answered a different question. "He said you wouldn't consider another dress." I stood in his kitchen holding it. The refrigerator clicked on behind us. Elise looked toward the sound, then back at me. "No," she said. "He told me you were offended." I was offended. I mean by the request. He said you felt I was trying to control you, and you refused to participate if you couldn't wear what you wanted. That isn't what happened. Her face tightened. Then what did happen? I pulled out a chair. Elise remained standing. I could have told her to ask her husband. For one hard second, I wanted to. Let Daniel explain his own words. Let him stand between us without being able to disappear into a hallway. But he had already explained. That was the problem. "Sit down," I said. She sat. I took the opposite chair. The white bowl rested on the counter behind her, a bright curve visible over her shoulder. "What did you ask him to tell me?" I said. Elise pressed her lips together. I saw the blue dress in a picture from that charity dinner. The wedding colors were soft, and I thought it might be a lot in the family photographs. A lot. I know how that sounds. How does it sound? Shallow. Accurate. She accepted that without defending herself. "I asked Daniel if you had anything less vivid," she continued. "I said I didn't want to make it a big deal. He told me he would talk to you. He did. I thought he asked you to choose another color. He told me my dress would distract people." Her eyes flicked down. "That was not what I told him to say. What did you tell him to say? That we were asking immediate family to stay within the palette for the formal pictures. I said if it mattered to you, we could figure something out. You did not ask immediate family. Your mother wore green. It was sage. I'm sure that distinction has saved many marriages." A flush moved up Elise's neck. "You're right," she said. "It was mostly about you." The honesty surprised me. "Why?" She looked at the table. "You have a strong presence. That sounds like something printed on a warning label. I didn't mean it as an insult." "What did you mean?" Elise laced her fingers together. Her wedding ring caught the kitchen light. "When you're in a room, people notice you. You talk to everyone. You tell stories. You make things feel informal. Daniel said I tell stories too." "He told you that?" "Yes." She closed her eyes briefly. "I was nervous," she said. "My parents had expectations. The photographer had given us this whole plan, and every detail felt like it mattered. I wanted the pictures to look a certain way. That was vain. I can admit that. But you didn't ask me not to attend." "No." The word came quickly. "Did you ever agree I shouldn't be there?" "No." "Did you know I had no invitation?" She looked genuinely confused. "Daniel said you didn't need a formal one because you were part of the family schedule." "What family schedule?" "I don't know. I thought you and he had worked it out. You never saw my name missing from the seating? He handled his side. I handled mine. Then after you two argued, he said you didn't want to come." I sat back. "Not couldn't. Didn't want to." "He told me the ceremony was too small," I said. "He said you both thought it would be better if I came to brunch after the photographs." Elise's mouth parted. "He said what?" "He told me I become emotional at family events. He said I might make you uncomfortable. He asked me to call the bakery on my way out." She pushed her chair back a few inches. "That's why you stopped helping. That's why I stopped helping. He told me you pulled out because I asked about the dress. I know. How? Your message said you wished we'd found a compromise." Elise looked toward the counter, as though the exact text might be written on the bowl. "I thought the compromise was the brunch," she said. "I thought you refused to attend anything. Did that sound like me?" Her answer took too long. "At the time," she said carefully, "I thought you were making a point. I was. The point was that I would not cater a celebration I had been deliberately excluded from. I didn't know. You didn't ask." She looked at me then. Not through me, not around the kitchen for the correct response, directly at me. "No," she said. "I didn't." The apology sat between us without decoration. I went to the stove and filled the kettle. "Do you want tea?" "I don't know. That wasn't one of the options." She gave a short, startled laugh. "Tea," she said. I set out 2 cups. My hands were steady, which felt unfair. I wanted something in the room to show that the conversation had cracked open the last 2 weeks of my life. Elise watched me. "Why didn't you contact me?" she asked. "I almost did. Why didn't you? Daniel told me the decision belonged to both of you. If I went around him, I would become the difficult mother trying to divide you before the wedding. But it didn't belong to both of us. I know that now." She rubbed her thumb over her ring. "On the honeymoon, he kept saying he wished you'd been more flexible." I set the tea bag into her cup. "Did you agree?" "Yes." The word was quiet. I poured the water. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the dress? For the dress. For believing him. For not calling you." I placed the cup in front of her. "You were willing to have me wear a color chosen for photographs. Daniel was willing to have me absent. Those are not the same thing." "No. But you knew something had gone badly, and you accepted the version that required nothing from you." Her eyes filled, though she did not look away. "Yes." I sat again. "I don't want you to leave here and turn this into a fight about which one of you is worse," I said. "That isn't what I'm doing. It may be what Daniel does. He may tell you this happened because you cared about photographs. He may tell me you forced his hand. He's already placed us on opposite sides of a conversation we never had." Elise looked down at the steam rising from her tea. "He does that," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. I waited. She rubbed a damp ring left by her cup. "He doesn't lie about big things," she said, "or I didn't think he did. He just edits. If my mother asks why we're late, he says you needed something. If you ask why we can't stay for dinner, he says I'm tired. It's always close enough to true that correcting him feels petty. Does he tell you I don't like you?" Her eyes lifted. "Sometimes." "What does he say?" "That you think I'm too formal. That you feel I've changed him." "I do think you're formal." A corner of her mouth moved. "But Daniel changed himself," I said. "He began doing it before you ever asked." She wrapped both hands around the cup without drinking. "I don't know what to do with this. Talk to your husband, and if he says you misunderstood?" I didn't. The certainty in my own voice startled me. 2 weeks earlier, Daniel could have given me 5 explanations, and I would have searched each one for a door back to him. Now there was only the kitchen, the dresses, and what he had said. Elise stood. Her tea remained untouched. At the doorway, she paused. "I would have added a chair. That is not the same as wanting me there." "I did want you there." "Then you should have noticed I wasn't." She flinched, and I hated that part of me was glad. "I'm sorry," she said again. I opened the door. She walked to her car without the bowl and platter she had come to return. At the driver's side, she stood with one hand on the roof, staring through the windshield. I closed the door before she looked back. Daniel called 11 minutes later. "What did you say to Elise?" I was still standing in the hallway. "The truth. She's sitting outside our house and won't come in. That sounds like a conversation for the two of you. She says you told her I uninvited you. You did. I did not use that word. Would an invitation have allowed me into the ceremony? Why are you doing this?" The question was louder than his others. Not angry, frightened. "I returned your dishes," he continued. "I was trying to do something normal. She said she wanted to bring them. I didn't know she was going to interrogate you. She didn't interrogate me." "Then what happened?" "She said she wished I had let her find me another dress. I told her I brought a navy one." He was silent. "You didn't think we would ever compare stories," I said. "That's not true. You told each of us what would keep us from speaking to the other. I was trying to calm things down. You removed me from your wedding because every option became a fight. There was no fight, Daniel. I wasn't in the room." Elise was panicking. Her parents were spending a fortune. You were already taking everything personally. I thought if I could get through the wedding by making me disappear, by giving everyone space. I almost laughed. "You gave my space to someone else." He began pacing. I could hear the movement of his breath, the faint change in sound each time he turned. I made one bad decision, he said. You made it every day you let me work on that wedding. That's not fair. There's that word again. I knew you'd be upset about the dress. I knew Elise would be upset if I pushed back. I thought brunch was a reasonable solution. For you? Yes, he snapped. Then quieter. Yes. For me. It was the first honest answer he had given about the wedding. I leaned against the wall. Is Elise still outside? Yes. Go talk to her. What am I supposed to say? That depends on whether you want a marriage or another arrangement that keeps you comfortable. He made a wounded sound. You're enjoying this. No. The word shook. I missed your wedding, Daniel. I sat in this house wearing the dress you once chose for me while you stood beside a photograph of your father. There is nothing here for me to enjoy. He stopped moving. When he spoke again, his voice was small. Why didn't you tell her before? Because you were my son, and I was still protecting you. He said my name, not Mom. Vivian. I'm not protecting you from your wife. The call ended without either of us hanging up on purpose. One moment I could hear him breathing. The next, there was only the empty line. The line remained in my hand until the phone began making the soft warning sound that meant nobody was there. I returned to the kitchen. Elise's tea had darkened in the cup. A thin skin floated on top, and the chair where she had sat was pushed back from the table. I poured the tea down the sink, rinsed the cup, and unwrapped the platter. It was mine, but for a moment I didn't recognize it. I had loaned so many things to the wedding that their return felt like an inventory after a house guest died. My phone chimed. Elise had written, I'm sorry, I should have spoken to you directly before the wedding. I need some time to talk to Daniel, but I won't make you responsible for that conversation. I read the message twice. Then I wrote, Thank you. I did not add that I was sorry. I was sorry she was hurt. I was sorry she had begun her marriage by learning her husband had lied to both of us. But any apology from me would have given Daniel a loose thread to pull until the whole thing became my fault again. The next morning, he was on my porch before 9. He looked worse than he had when he came for Frank's photograph. His shirt was wrinkled, and he had missed a patch of stubble beneath his chin. He held a cardboard tray with 2 coffees. I brought yours with cream, he said. I opened the storm door but did not step aside. What do you want, Daniel? To talk. We talked yesterday. No, you accused me and hung up. The call disconnected. Convenient. I looked at the coffee. He noticed. It's getting cold. You always say coffee doesn't stay in you long enough to matter. I say a lot of stupid things. That's a broad apology. Can I come in? I let him enter. He took off his shoes this time and placed them neatly beside the door. The gesture was so familiar it irritated me more than if he had tracked mud through the house. At the kitchen table, he pushed my coffee across to me. I wrapped my hands around it but did not drink. Elise slept in the guest room, he said. I'm sorry. She thinks she can't trust anything I tell her about you. Can she? He stared at me. This is what I mean. What do you mean? You're not even trying to help. Help what? My marriage. You lied to your wife about me and lied to me about your wife. There is no useful place for me in the repair. You could tell her I was under pressure. You were. You could tell her weddings make people act out of character. Did they? He looked down at his coffee. I made a bad call, he said. You made several. Fine. Several. I should have handled it differently. Handled what differently? His head came up. Do we have to go through every word? Yes. Why? Because you keep apologizing for the weather. I need to know whether you understand that you made it rain. He pushed his cup away hard enough to splash coffee through the lid. Elise didn't want the dress. I know. She was panicking about the photographs. Her mother was upset because the florist had changed the flowers. Charles kept asking about the budget. You had already made comments about how formal everything was. What comments? You called the napkins defensive. That was 7 months ago, and only to you. You see? You always have to say something. I sat back. Daniel heard himself. His face shifted, but he did not take it back. You're right, I said. I say things. That's not what I meant. It is. It's what you told me in your kitchen. I tell stories. I might cry. I might make a joke. Elise's parents might learn you once washed ground beef. I knew you would do this. Do what? Make it sound ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It wasn't ridiculous when I was standing in the middle of it. Every time I tried to please one of you, the other one got upset. I was not upset before you excluded me. You were judging everything. I thought I liked Elise. Thought? I still like her. He gave a sharp laugh. You certainly had a strange way of showing it. I helped her plan your wedding. You helped because you like being needed. The sentence was ugly because it contained truth. I looked at him. Daniel's anger faltered, but he continued. You act like everyone drags you into things against your will. Then you keep a list of everything you did. I didn't keep a list. You remember every favor. I remember because I was there. His hands closed around the coffee cup. I needed you, he said. You needed me to do the work. You did not want me to be seen doing it. That isn't true. You placed your dead father on a table and left your living mother at home. His face crumpled for half a second. I hated myself for saying it. I also refused to take it back. Do you think that hasn't been in my head every day? He asked. I don't know what's in your head. You keep giving everyone edited copies. He stood and walked to the sink. The white bowl Elise had returned sat in the drying rack, though it had never been wet. She's asking what else I've lied about, he said. What have you told her? That there's nothing else. Is that true? Yes. I waited. He turned. Nothing important. I rubbed my forehead. That doesn't mean there are secrets. It means sometimes I tell her you asked me to come over when I don't feel like going out with her friends. Sometimes I tell you she has a headache when we don't stay for dinner. I know. You know, I didn't know the details. I knew the shape. Then why didn't you say anything? Because each lie was small enough to look like kindness. He leaned against the counter. That's what I was trying to do with the wedding. No. Kindness protects the person being lied to. You protected yourself. He looked away. Outside, a truck backed down the street, beeping steadily. Daniel watched it through the window until it disappeared. Are you going to forgive me? He asked. The question was so direct that it caught me without armor. I don't know. His eyes returned to mine. You don't know. It has been less than 2 weeks since your wedding. It feels longer. For me, too. What do you need? I need you to stop calling this a misunderstanding. I never said it was. You told Elise I misunderstood the dress request. You told Peter I chose not to attend. You told me the decision belonged to you and Elise. Now you're calling it a bad call made under pressure. Every version makes the harm smaller. What word do you want? I want you to find your own. He pulled out the chair and sat again. For several moments, he studied his hands. I was scared, he said. Of what? That if I pushed back on Elise, it would become this huge fight. That her parents would think my family couldn't respect one simple request. That you'd show up in the blue dress anyway and everyone would know I had no control over anything. There it was. Not all of it, but enough to make the room colder. Control over me? Huh? That's not how I meant it. How did you mean it? He rubbed his palms against his jeans. I wanted one day where everyone just did what they were supposed to do, and I was supposed to disappear. No, you were supposed to understand, without being told the truth. He closed his eyes. I picked up the coffee he had brought. It was lukewarm now, the cream leaving a pale ribbon beneath the plastic lid. Did you ever intend to invite me? I asked. He did not answer quickly enough. I thought you'd agree to the brunch, he said. The truth was quieter than the lies had been. I put the coffee down. Daniel leaned forward. Can we have dinner Sunday? Just you and me. We don't have to talk about the wedding. No. His face went still. Why not? Because eating roast and pretending this didn't happen would feel good for 2 hours. Then you would decide we were fine. So I'm not welcome here now? I didn't say that. You said no to dinner. I said no to using dinner as proof of forgiveness. He stood. How long are you going to punish me? I am not punishing you. You stopped helping. You skipped the brunch. You told Elise. Now you won't even eat with me. I did not skip your brunch. I was excluded from your ceremony and declined the consolation shift. Fine. He grabbed his coffee. And I didn't tell Elise, I continued. She came here with my dishes and spoke to me like an adult. He flinched at the last word. I regretted that too. He put on his shoes without sitting, crushing the backs under his heels. At the door, he said, I came here to apologize. No, you came here because Elise is angry. That isn't fair. Come back when you can tell the difference. He left both coffees behind. I poured them out after his car was gone. On Sunday, the question mark arrived at 12:17. I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I replied, Not this week. He wrote, Okay. At 11 that night, my phone rang. I woke with my heart pounding and answered before I saw his name. Daniel? Sorry, did I wake you? What happened? Elise and I had another fight. I sat up in bed. Frank's side remained smooth beside me. Are you both safe? Yes. Then we can speak tomorrow. Mom, wait. I closed my eyes. She says, I don't know how to be honest when honesty makes somebody angry, he said. She says she doesn't know why she married me. I gripped the blanket. Every part of me knew what came next. I would calm him. I would translate Elise's anger into something survivable. I would tell him what to say in the morning and reassure him that one terrible week did not define a marriage. Then Daniel would sleep, and I would carry the night for him. You need to talk to your wife, I said. She won't talk to me, then give her time. I need to know what to do. I can't tell you. You always know. No, I always make you feel better. Silence. Isn't that what a mother is supposed to do? He asked. Not when feeling better keeps you from changing. His breath broke. I nearly called his name. Instead, I said, I love you. I'm going back to sleep. He hung up before I could. I set the phone on the nightstand and turned it to silent for the first time in 39 years. At 6 the next morning, I turned the sound back on. There were no missed calls. I had expected relief. Instead, I felt foolishly abandoned, as if Daniel should have spent the night trying to reach me after I had made it impossible. At 8, he sent a message. Sorry I called so late. You were right. It wasn't fair. I read it while standing in the cereal aisle of the grocery store. A man beside me spent several minutes comparing the sugar content of 2 boxes, unaware that my son had just offered me the first apology that did not contain an explanation. I wrote, Thank you. Then I put the phone away and bought the cereal with more sugar. Daniel stopped sending question marks on Sundays. The first week, I made too much food. The second, I ate a sandwich over the sink. By the third, Ruth had begun inviting me to her house, where dinner was less organized and therefore more peaceful. Ruth cooked by instinct, which meant she opened the oven repeatedly and looked offended by whatever she found inside. Is this chicken done? She asked one evening. I cut into it. No. Are you sure? It's still negotiating. She returned it to the oven. Her dining table had become a storage surface for mail, knitting supplies, and a lamp she planned to repair despite having no electrical skills. We ate from trays in the living room while watching a documentary about competitive gardeners. You hate gardening, I said. I hate doing it. Watching other people become unstable over dahlias is entertaining. I began to understand that dinner did not have to be evidence of a functioning family. Sometimes it was 2 women eating overcooked chicken while strangers argued about flowers. Daniel texted every few days, a picture of the rosemary on his patio. Do you think this is dying? I replied. It's rosemary. It's being dramatic. A message about a restaurant Frank used to like closing. A question about whether Marjorie's birthday was the 12th or the 13th. The 13th, I wrote. She celebrates on the 12th, so people who forget appear late. We did not discuss the wedding. I answered when I wanted to, sometimes immediately, sometimes the next day. Each delay felt unnatural at first. I had spent so long treating Daniel's smallest request as a bell only I could hear. Elise called in August. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answered because avoiding her felt too much like participating in Daniel's old system. "I don't want to put you in the middle," she began. "That phrase has lost all meaning in this family." She gave a quiet laugh. Then she said, "Daniel and I are working through things. I'm glad. We're not separating." I didn't ask. "I know. I just didn't want you to think, Elise, your marriage belongs to you." A pause. "That's what our counselor said." So they were seeing someone. I felt a wave of relief followed by resentment that relief had come so easily. Counseling was not repentance. It was an appointment. "Good," I said. He admitted he told different versions because he thought if you and I spoke directly, one of us would make him choose. What did he think he had done by excluding me? He says he wasn't thinking that far. That sounds like Daniel. He also says you're not speaking to him. We speak. He says it's different. It is. Elise exhaled. "I'm not asking you to fix it." "Good." I wanted to apologize again. "You already did." "I know. I'm trying to get better at saying things before they become useless." There was no polished quality in her voice. She sounded tired and slightly embarrassed. "I accept your apology," I said. She became quiet. It was the first time I had said it. "I don't accept the request about the dress," I added. "That's fair. And I won't pretend you had no part in what happened. I know. But I believe you did not ask him to exclude me." "I didn't." "I believe you." Her breath caught. We ended the call without making plans. I appreciated that she did not ask to come over or invite me to lunch. A new closeness would have been another way of using the damage before it had healed. The heat faded. The rosemary survived. My bare ring finger lost the pale indentation Frank's band had left behind. Sometimes I opened the drawer and looked at the ring beside his watch. I never felt ready to put it on again, but I wasn't ready to move it into the wooden box either. It remained between those choices, which was where much of my life seemed to be. In October, Marjorie called and asked what time Thanksgiving dinner would be. "I'm not hosting," she laughed. I waited. "You're serious," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I don't want to. That has never stopped anyone from hosting Thanksgiving. It has stopped me." "What are we supposed to do? You own an oven. My apartment seats 4 if 2 people don't breathe. Ask Peter. Peter serves potatoes from a box." "They've improved. This is because of Daniel. It is partly because of Daniel. At least you admit it. I also don't want to spend 3 days cooking for people who will arrive with 1 bottle of wine and opinions about gravy. I bring pie. You purchase pie. I transport it. Then your contribution remains essential." Marjorie called Peter. Peter called Ruth. Ruth called me and said, "You have created panic among the poultry class." Peter agreed to host. He lived in a narrow 2-story house with a dining room that could hold 12 adults if nobody needed to leave the table before dessert. He sent a spreadsheet assigning dishes. Marjorie objected to receiving salad, and Stephen volunteered to bring both salad and wine, which made me understand why she kept him. Daniel called 2 days before Thanksgiving. It was the first time we had spoken by phone since the late-night call. "Are you going to Peter's?" he asked. "Yes. Elise and I are too." I assumed. "Do you want us not to?" The question irritated me. It's not my house. That's not what I asked. I'm not asking you to stay away from the family. Then why aren't you hosting? Because I don't want to host. Because I'd be there. In part. He went quiet. "I thought we were doing better," he said. "We are." "This is better?" "You called me and asked a direct question. I gave you an honest answer. Yes, Daniel, this is better." He let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "Should we bring anything?" "Ask Peter." I did. He assigned roles, then guarded them carefully. At Peter's house, the dining table had been extended with a folding table that sat half an inch lower. Peter covered both with one cloth and seemed personally betrayed when the dip remained visible. Marjorie arrived wearing a red velvet jacket and carrying a store-bought pie in a ceramic dish, so it looked homemade from a distance. Stephen brought wine, salad, and a small toolbox because Peter had mentioned a loose cabinet hinge. "Marry him," Ruth told Marjorie. "Don't rush me. You met him on a cruise 14 months ago. We were at sea. Time behaves differently." Daniel and Elise arrived together. For a few seconds, everyone became busy with coats. Elise hugged me first. It was brief and careful. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said. "You too." Daniel stood behind her holding a bag of rolls. "Hi, Mom. Hello." He leaned toward me, then stopped. I closed the distance and kissed his cheek. His skin was cold from outside. He did not interpret the kiss as forgiveness. I knew because he stepped back without softening into relief. Dinner was noisy enough to be useful. Peter's turkey was dry, Ruth's vegetables were excellent despite her complaints, and Marjorie kept asking Stephen whether the salad needed more salt while adding salt before he answered. Daniel sat across from me. He passed dishes when asked and did not try to catch my eye every time I laughed. Halfway through the meal, Peter's cousin Linda, who knew only enough about the wedding to be dangerous, said, "Vivian, I saw the pictures. Such a shame you couldn't make the dress situation work." Every fork seemed to pause at a different height. I put down my water glass. Before I could answer, Daniel said, "That isn't what happened." Linda looked at him. "Oh?" Elise's face went still beside him. Daniel stared at his plate. "Mom had another dress," he said. "She wanted to come. I asked her not to." Nobody moved. He continued, each word sounding heavier than the last. "I told her Elise agreed with me. She didn't. Then I told people Mom chose not to attend. That wasn't true either." Linda's mouth opened and closed. Marjorie reached for her wine. Peter studied the turkey as though considering whether to put it back in the oven. Daniel looked at me. "It was my decision," he said, "and it was wrong." There was no applause. No one rushed to comfort me. Stephen cleared his throat and asked Ruth to pass the vegetables. Conversation resumed badly, then gradually became normal again. Daniel did not watch to see whether I looked grateful. That mattered. After dinner, I found him alone in Peter's kitchen, scraping plates into the trash. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know," he kept scraping. "I should have corrected them before today." "Yes." He nodded. No defense. No request that I acknowledge how difficult it had been. From the dining room, Marjorie shouted that Peter had hidden the whipped cream. Peter shouted back that it was in the refrigerator where whipped cream traditionally lived. Daniel smiled down at the plate in his hands. "I miss Sunday dinner," he said. "So do I." He looked at me. I took the plate and held it under the faucet while he reached for the next one. We washed dishes side by side, not reconciled, not pretending, and for the first time since his wedding, neither of us tried to make the moment mean more than it did. When the last plate was clean, Daniel dried his hands on a towel and handed it to me. "Can I call you this week?" he asked. "You can call." He waited, perhaps expecting me to specify what we would talk about or whether I would answer. I folded the towel and hung it over the oven handle. "Drive safely," I said. He nodded. That was all. On Monday, he sent a message saying he had spoken to Charles and Diane about the wedding. I told them the same thing I told everyone at dinner. Diane said she suspected something didn't add up. Charles said, "I owe you an apology in person." I wrote, "You owe me one whether Charles says so or not." Daniel replied, "I know." He did not add that he had already apologized. He did not ask whether his Thanksgiving confession counted. He left the message where it was. December arrived with demands disguised as traditions. Marjorie wanted to know who was making Christmas dinner. Peter suggested a restaurant, then withdrew the suggestion after Marjorie told him eating Christmas dinner beside strangers was how civilizations decline. Ruth offered her house on the condition that nobody criticize her oven. Daniel volunteered to host. The family group became silent for nearly an hour. Then Peter asked what he should bring. I watched the plans take shape without me. Elise organized the meal. Daniel assigned dishes. Diane offered chairs. Nobody asked me for a guest list, serving bowls, or an opinion about the menu. It was a relief. It was also painful. Usefulness had been my proof of belonging for so long that sitting still felt like being forgotten. Daniel called 3 days before Christmas. "Are you coming?" he asked. "I haven't decided." "Okay, no argument, no accusation." "What are you making?" I asked. "Roast beef." "Have you made roast beef?" "I have watched 2 videos." "That is not the same thing." "I know." "Do you own a meat thermometer?" "Yes." "Does it work? I'm not asking you to troubleshoot dinner." The sentence could have sounded defensive. Instead, it was gentle. "I want you there as a guest," he said. "If you're not ready, I understand." I looked at the blue dress in my closet. It had nothing to do with Christmas, but my eyes kept finding it whenever Daniel asked me to enter his home. "I'm not ready," I said. He took a breath. "Okay. Ruth and I are having dinner together. Do you want me to bring anything over?" "No." "Okay." His willingness to accept the second no hurt almost as much as his old resistance. It showed me how simple respect could have been. On Christmas afternoon, he sent a photograph of the roast. It was pink in the middle and sliced too soon, but not ruined. "Looks good," I wrote. "It's bleeding on the cutting board." "That's why God gave us gravy." He sent back a laughing face. Ruth and I ate at her house. She cooked turkey because she did not trust any holiday meat that expected to remain red. We exchanged practical gifts and watched an old movie Frank had loved. Halfway through, Ruth noticed my ring was still off. "You keeping it that way?" she asked. "For now." She nodded and passed the chocolates. Daniel did not call that night. He had finally stopped using important days to force important conversations. In January, he asked if he could come over on Saturday morning. "Not for dinner," he wrote. "Just to talk, if you're willing." I said yes. He arrived alone and empty-handed. No flowers, no coffee, no object he could place between us as proof of intention. He took off his shoes and sat at the kitchen table. I made coffee because I wanted some, not because he was there. When I set a cup in front of him, he thanked me and left it untouched. For a while, he looked around the kitchen. The list had disappeared from his refrigerator months earlier, but I could almost see him remembering it. The serving bowls were back in the cabinet. Frank's photograph remained at Daniel's townhouse. I'd never asked for it, and he had never offered to return it. "I've been trying to figure out what to say," he began. "That usually gets you in trouble." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "Elise says I should start with what I did, not why I did it. That sounds sensible. She says explanations are where I hide. That also sounds sensible." A faint smile moved across his mouth, then disappeared. "I asked you not to come to my wedding," he said. "I knew you wanted to be there. I knew Elise hadn't asked me to exclude you. I told both of you a different story because I didn't want either of you angry with me. I waited. I let you keep helping after I had decided not to send you an invitation. Then when you found out, I acted like you were unreasonable for being hurt. I lied to the family so I wouldn't look cruel." The coffee machine ticked as it cooled. Daniel rubbed his thumb against a scratch in the table. "I've said all that in counseling," he continued. "It sounds rehearsed now. It sounds specific. I don't want it to sound like I'm reading charges. Then tell me the part you don't want to say." He looked at me. His eyes were tired, but he was no longer wearing exhaustion like evidence that I should spare him. "The dress embarrassed me," he said. The room went very still. "Why?" "Not because it was ugly." "I know. You looked good in it. You looked—" He searched for the word. "Unapologetic." I almost laughed. "It's a dress, Daniel. It wasn't only the dress. I know that, too." He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "At the engagement dinner, I watched you talking to Charles. You mentioned the year Dad was out of work and how we lived on soup for a month. He asked how Frank learned to cook. You could have told him anything. I told him the truth. I know. But all I could think was that Charles would hear it and know exactly what kind of family I came from. What kind?" He looked ashamed before he answered. "One that struggled. Most families struggle, not like theirs. You don't know how they struggled. No, I didn't want to know. I wanted them to think I belonged with them. I picked up my coffee, then put it down without drinking. So I threatened that. You reminded me of everything I was trying not to show. My stories, your jokes, the way you talk to strangers like you've known them for years, the way you don't care if the napkins are correct. I do care if they're clean. He smiled despite himself. Then his face folded again. When Elise mentioned the dress, it gave me something concrete. I could make it about a color instead of admitting I was worried you would walk into that room and everyone would see the parts of me I had edited out. You loved those parts when we were alone. I know. You called me every night. I know. You asked me to make your house feel welcoming for people you were afraid would judge the woman making it welcoming. His eyes filled. I know. I let him sit with it. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand. I wanted you when I needed to feel like myself, he said. Then I treated you like a liability when other people were watching. There was the truth I had been waiting for. It did not make me feel better. It made the wound clearer. Why did you think I would accept brunch? I asked. He looked at the table. Because you always stay. The answer came so quietly I nearly missed it. I thought you'd be angry. I thought you might not speak to me for a few days, but I thought you would come to brunch because you wouldn't want me to remember my wedding without you. I didn't want that. I know. You counted on my love making the injury temporary. Yes. His voice broke. I thought you were the one person I could hurt without losing. I looked toward the window. A light snow had begun, small flakes dissolving against the glass. That wasn't trust, I said. No, it wasn't love. No, it was entitlement. He nodded. I made you carry my embarrassment, he said. Then I called it consideration. Neither of us moved. I had imagined his apology in 100 forms. In some, I embraced him before he finished. In others, I turned cold and made him beg. The real moment offered neither satisfaction. He was my son sitting at my table, finally telling the truth about why he had not wanted me at his wedding. I'm sorry, he said. Not because Elise is angry, not because Sunday dinners stopped, not because the family knows. I am sorry I used the fact that you loved me as permission to humiliate you. I breathed in slowly. I believe you. His shoulders lowered, but only slightly. That does not put us back where we were, I said. I know. No, listen, he straightened. I may forgive you. I think I want to. But you are not getting the old relationship back. His face tightened. The old relationship taught you that you could call me when you were lonely, hand me whatever work you didn't want, and then hide me when I complicated the picture. I helped teach you that. Every time I cleaned up a lie because confronting you seemed too painful, I helped. You didn't cause this. I didn't say I did. What does a new relationship look like? I don't know yet. He nodded, but I could see fear rising. I do know a few things, I said. You do not use me as an excuse with Elise. You do not use Elise as an excuse with me. If you don't want to come to dinner, say no. If she doesn't like something I do, she can tell me herself. Okay, you do not call at midnight so I can make your consequences feel smaller. Okay, and if I say no, you don't punish me with silence or tell the family I abandon you. He closed his eyes. Okay, if you are embarrassed by me again, you tell me. You do not love me in private and edit me in public. I won't. You don't know that yet. He opened his eyes. Then I'll tell you if I feel it. That is a beginning. He sat back. Can I ask one thing? You can ask. Do you want me in your life? The question made him look younger, though there was nothing childish in it. He was an adult who had finally understood that relationships could end without anyone dying. Yes, I said, but wanting you is not the same as giving you unlimited access. He nodded. At the door, he put on his coat and stood with one hand on the knob. Can I hug you? My body answered before my voice did. My shoulders drew tight. Not today. Pain crossed his face. Then he nodded. Thank you for telling me. He opened the door and stepped into the snow. For once, he did not ask me to protect him from the cost of hearing no. I watched from the doorway until his car disappeared through the snow. The next afternoon, Daniel texted, "Would you have coffee with me next Saturday? Somewhere neutral. No favors, no emergency." I smiled at somewhere neutral. He made the coffee shop sound like a country where neither of us had diplomatic immunity. I agreed. He was already there when I arrived, seated at a small table near the window. He stood as I approached, then seemed uncertain whether standing had created an obligation to hug me. "Sit down," I said. He sat. He had ordered only his own coffee. That small restraint touched me. For years, he had brought me what he thought I wanted and treated the guests as intimacy. I ordered tea. For the first 10 minutes, we discussed the snow, then the city council, then whether Peter had repaired the loose cabinet hinge or simply stopped opening the cabinet. Daniel did not mention the wedding. Finally, he said, "What have you been doing?" It sounded so much like a question people asked before requesting something that I waited for the second half. It did not come. "I'm taking a pottery class with Ruth." His eyebrows rose. "You hate getting your hands dirty." "I don't hate it. I prefer dirt to have a purpose." "What are you making?" "So far, a series of objects that suggest bowls." He laughed. Ruth had signed us up after announcing that we needed a hobby nobody in the family could eat. The instructor, a patient woman named Nina, told me I was trying to control the clay. "The clay has no plan," I told her. "It does," Nina said. "You're just not listening." I had considered dropping the class after that. Then Ruth's first bowl collapsed into something resembling a hat, and I needed to see what happened next. Daniel asked questions, not polite questions followed by glances at his phone. He wanted to know whether we used a wheel, whether the clay was gray before firing, and why Ruth had chosen a bright orange glaze. "Poor judgment," I said. "That explains a lot." We stayed for 40 minutes. When the conversation paused, he did not fill it with an old grievance or ask whether I was ready for Sunday dinner. At the door, he said, "Can we do this again?" "Yes." He nodded. No hug. No visible disappointment. He walked toward his car while I stood beneath the awning, surprised by how much his restraint had given me. We met for coffee again 2 weeks later. That time, Daniel brought Frank's photograph. He placed it on the table inside a plain envelope. "I had a copy made," he said. I kept the copy. I slid the photograph out. Frank stood beside the planters, smiling at whatever I had said behind the camera. "You can keep the original too," I said. "It's yours. He was yours." Daniel looked down. He would have been furious with me. "Yes. I used to think Dad was the one who cared what everybody thought. He did. You never seemed to." "I cared. I just didn't make it everyone else's job." He traced the rim of his cup. "Did he ever do something you couldn't forgive? That is not a question you ask someone who was married for 34 years, unless you have several hours and a strong stomach." Daniel smiled. Then I said, "Your father disappointed me. I disappointed him. There were years when we were not kind enough to each other, but you stayed. Sometimes staying was brave. Sometimes it was habit. Don't turn our marriage into a lesson you can use without knowing the cost." He absorbed that. I put the photograph back into the envelope. "Is that what you and Elise are doing?" I asked. "Trying to stay?" "We're trying to stop winning." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." He told me they had begun correcting each other in real time. If Daniel blamed me for declining an invitation he had forgotten to answer, Elise made him send the correction before the lie became convenient. If Elise told Diane that Daniel was too busy to attend dinner when he simply did not want to go, he made her call back. "We're both finding out how often we use other people as excuses," he said. "I would prefer not to receive reports from your counseling." "Right." He looked embarrassed. "But I'm glad you're doing the work," I added. "Thank you." When we left, Daniel reached into his coat pocket. "I have to cancel our next coffee," he said. Elise and I are going away for the weekend. You don't need permission." "I know. I wanted to tell you now instead of saying she made plans." I nodded. "Have a good trip." 3 days later, my phone rang while I was fighting a lump of clay that Nina claimed could sense my frustration. Daniel's name appeared. I let it go to voicemail. Ruth looked over from the neighboring wheel. Emergency. If it is, he'll call again. He did not. After class, I listened to the message. "Hi, Mom. Nothing urgent. I was wondering if you know where Dad bought that terrible green chair he loved. Elise and I were talking about it. Call whenever." I waited until the next afternoon. Daniel did not complain. That was how trust returned, not as warmth, but as the absence of old pressure. A question remained a question. A no survived without becoming an injury. Silence stopped being punishment and became ordinary time. Elise invited me to lunch in March. She chose a small cafe with paper napkins and mismatched cups. When I pointed that out, she said, "I'm practicing informality. You're wearing a blazer, one crisis at a time." She looked rested, not entirely happy, but less arranged. We talked about work, Ruth's pottery, and Diane's insistence that decorative pillows could not be moved from a sofa even when people wanted to sit. Then Elise said, "Daniel turns 40 in June. I'm aware. I was present at the beginning." She smiled. "We want to have dinner at the townhouse. Just family." The word townhouse tightened something in my chest. Elise saw it. "You don't have to answer now. Who is family?" "You. Ruth, Peter, Marjorie, and Stephen, my parents." "Stephen has achieved family?" "He survived Marjorie on a cruise. That is legally binding." I folded my napkin. "Why are you asking instead of Daniel?" "Because I'm hosting too." Directness. It was still formal in her hands, but it was hers. "Is there a color palette?" I asked. Her face reddened. "I deserve that." "Yes, there is no palette." "Will there be photographs?" "Probably." "And will my presence make your parents uncomfortable?" "No." That answer came quickly. "I've thought about it." I waited. Elise looked down at her plate. "The night I came to your house, I was angry at Daniel because he lied. It took me longer to admit I was angry because his lie gave me exactly what I wanted without making me say it. I said nothing. I wanted the pictures to look perfect. I wanted my parents to think everything was smooth. I didn't want to deal with the possibility that you'd wear the blue dress after I asked you not to. When Daniel said you had chosen not to come, part of me was relieved. That part matters." "I know. Have you told Daniel?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "That he knew." Her expression shifted. He knew I'd be relieved, and he used that too. He didn't only lie because he was afraid of choosing. He made choices for both of us, then arranged the facts so we could blame each other. That sounds like Daniel. It sounded like me, too. She met my eyes. "I am sorry I didn't want all of you there. Not just sorry I failed to call. I'm sorry I preferred the version of you that helped quietly and matched the room." The apology hurt in a clean way. "I believe you," I said. "I don't know if that means you'll come." "It doesn't." "Okay." She did not ask again. April brought rain and 3 usable bowls from pottery class. Ruth's orange creation survived firing but leaned to one side. She used it for mail. I glazed mine dark blue without recognizing the choice until Nina placed it on the shelf beside the others. "Listening to the clay?" she asked. "Don't become smug." I gave the bowl to myself. That sounds obvious, but it wasn't. My first instinct had been to decide who needed it. I placed it on my kitchen table and put lemons in it. Daniel saw it during a brief visit and asked if I had made it. "Yes, it's beautiful." "It's uneven." "So are lemons." That is not relevant. He turned the bowl slowly, but did not ask if he could have it. At the door, I hugged him. I did it without planning. He had one hand on the doorknob, and I touched his shoulder, then put my arms around him. He went perfectly still. For a second, I regretted it. Then his arms came around me carefully, not gripping, not claiming. When I stepped back, his eyes were wet. He did not say thank you. That helped. The invitation to his birthday dinner arrived by mail in May, not a formal wedding-style invitation, a simple card in Elise's handwriting. Dinner at our house, June 14th, 6 o'clock. We would love to have you. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. I set the card beside the blue bowl. Ruth read it when she came over that evening. That last sentence is dangerous, she said. It's an invitation, not a challenge. Is it? I think so. Are you going? I haven't decided. You have 6 weeks. I'm aware of how calendars work. 5 weeks passed before I replied. I wrote yes on the card Elise had included and mailed it back, though a text would have been faster. I wanted my answer to arrive in the form of a choice, not a reaction. Daniel called when they received it. I'm glad you're coming, he said. I'm nervous. Me too. That honesty settled me more than reassurance would have. Do you want to know what I'm wearing? I asked. He was quiet for one beat. No, he said. I want you to wear it. I did not correct the pronoun. On the afternoon of his birthday, Ruth came to my house early. She found me standing in the bedroom with the navy dress laid across the bed and the blue dress hanging from the closet door. Well, she said, this is subtle. I can't decide. Yes, you can. You're deciding why. I looked at her in the mirror. If you wear the blue dress to test him, she said, then you'll spend the whole evening watching his face. I know. If you wear the navy to protect him, you'll spend the whole evening hating yourself. I know. Do you want my opinion? No. Good. I don't have one. She sat on the edge of the bed. I touched the blue silk. Frank had liked the dress. Daniel had chosen it. Elise had feared it. I had worn it alone during the wedding they had built without me. For months, it had carried everyone's meaning except mine. I put it on. Ruth zipped the back without comment. I fastened small silver earrings and left my ring finger bare. At 5:40, I drove to Daniel's townhouse. Cars lined the block. Through the front windows, I could see people moving beneath the patio lights Frank had once helped Daniel hang. My hands remained on the steering wheel after I parked. I was not afraid of the room. I was afraid that one look from my son could return me to the woman standing in his kitchen with 2 garment bags, offering to become less visible. Then the front door opened. Daniel stepped onto the porch and saw me through the windshield. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then Daniel came down the steps. I opened the car door before he could reach it. The blue skirt spilled across my knees and caught the light from the porch. His eyes went to the dress. There was no way not to see it. I watched recognition move across his face, followed by something more complicated. Shame, probably. Memory. Maybe fear that the evening had become another test he did not know how to pass. Then he looked at me. I'm glad you're here, he said. Not you look beautiful. Not I don't care what anyone thinks. Nothing that made the dress the center of the moment. I stepped out of the car. Happy birthday. He hugged me. I hugged him back. His hold was warm but brief. When we separated, he did not search my face for forgiveness. Do you need help with anything? He asked. I can walk from the curb. I meant your bag. I don't have one. Right. He smiled, nervous enough to look like the man who once borrowed my ladder because he had met Elise. We went up the steps together. The townhouse had changed since I last entered it, not dramatically. The walls were the same color. The living room furniture sat in the same arrangement, and Frank's patio lights glowed through the back windows. But the kitchen counter held food instead of 2 garment bags, and the list I had made no longer hung from the refrigerator. Frank's photograph stood on a small shelf beside the patio door. Daniel had kept the copy of him beside the planters, just as he said he would. It was not arranged with candles or flowers. It belonged there. Elise came from the dining room carrying a stack of napkins. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes lowered to the dress, then returned to my face. Hi, she said. Hello, you came. I said I would. I know, She shook her head. I'm glad. She hugged me carefully, not because she was afraid I would break, because she was still learning where she was welcome. Diane and Charles stood near the patio doors with Peter. Ruth occupied one end of the sofa, drinking wine, while Marjorie told Stephen that the living room needed another lamp. Stephen had been inside the house for less than 10 minutes and was already being assigned electrical work. Ruth saw my dress and raised her glass. I gave her a look. "I didn't say anything," she protested. "Your eyebrows did. I can't help the architecture." Marjorie turned. "Well," she said, "be careful. I was going to say the color suits you." "No, you weren't." "No," she admitted, "but I've been threatened." Stephen handed me a glass of wine. "Happy Daniel's birthday," he said. "You've learned quickly. Survival is adaptive." Nobody stared at the dress after that. Diane told me the color was lovely. Peter asked whether it was new, then turned red when Ruth kicked his ankle. "What?" he said. "It could be new to me." "Most things are," Ruth told him. Charles approached while everyone else moved toward the dining room. He waited until we were alone beside the patio doors. "Vivian," he said, "I owe you an apology. You did not uninvite me." "No, but I accepted an explanation that should have troubled me." He looked toward Daniel, who was adjusting a roasting pan on the counter, while Elise told him to leave it alone. "When I heard you weren't attending," Charles continued, "I assumed there had been a disagreement and that it was best not to interfere. That was convenient." "Yes." He accepted the word without flinching. "I also think Daniel believed he had to present a certain version of himself to us. I'm sorry if I contributed to that." "You probably did." He nodded. "So did I said. I knew he was editing himself. I kept helping with the edit because I thought that was what support looked like." Charles glanced at my dress. "It's a striking color. It has a history, so I've gathered." There was no need to tell him more. Daniel called everyone to dinner before Marjorie could rearrange the seating. The dining table held 8 comfortably. There were 9 of us. Stephen volunteered for the folding chair at the end, which tilted slightly each time he reached for his wine. "I like an element of danger," he said. "You met Marjorie on a ship," Peter replied. "We know." Daniel had made roast beef again. This time he had allowed it to rest before slicing, though he admitted he had stood over it with a timer. "I wanted to cut it at 8 minutes, he said. "It needed 15, I told him. "I know, I watched another video. You're practically certified." He smiled and passed me the platter. For the first part of dinner, everyone behaved too well. Marjorie complimented the potatoes. Ruth asked Diane about her garden. Peter did not mention the wedding, the dress, or anything likely to make an adult leave the table. The politeness became so thick I could feel it coating the silverware. Finally, Stephen's folding chair dipped, and he grabbed the table with both hands. Marjorie said, "If you fall, don't take the wine." The room loosened. Conversation moved naturally after that. Charles told a story about getting lost on the way to the restaurant where he first met Diane. Elise admitted she had once used a presentation pointer during an argument with Daniel because she wanted to explain why his plan for reorganizing the kitchen would not work. "You made slides?" I asked. 4. "There were transitions," Daniel said. "They were subtle." Ruth raised her glass. "You two are made for each other." At one point, Peter mentioned a furniture store near his office that was closing. Daniel looked at me. "That reminds me," he said. "I asked Mom about Dad's green chair." "What green chair?" Diane asked. "Oh no," Daniel said. "I've opened the door." He was smiling at me. I could have let the moment pass. Months earlier, he had told me my stories were one of the things he feared. That fear had been cruel, but not imaginary. I could take over a room, I could make a memory larger than the people sitting inside it. So I asked, "Do you want me to tell it?" Daniel's smile changed. "Yes." Frank bought the green chair during Daniel's first year in his own apartment. It was upholstered in a shade that belonged somewhere between avocado and municipal carpet. Frank found it at a warehouse sale, paid $20, and spent twice that renting a truck to bring it home. He claimed it supported his lower back, I said. "It did," Daniel insisted. "It supported poor decisions." Daniel had hated the chair until Frank died. Then he moved it from our house to his townhouse and kept it for 3 more years, despite Elise's increasingly formal objections. "I never formally objected," Elise said. "You made a presentation," Daniel replied. It had 2 slides. The table laughed. I watched Daniel while they did. He was not embarrassed. He was not scanning Charles's face or waiting for me to say something that revealed too much. He sat with one hand around his wine glass, allowing the story to belong to all of us. When the laughter faded, he said, "I got rid of it because one of the legs finally broke. You got rid of it because Elise found a chair that didn't resemble soup," I said. "That too." The story ended. Nobody learned a secret. Nobody's opinion of Daniel collapsed. It was simply his father's terrible chair, briefly alive at the table. After dinner, Elise brought out a chocolate cake with 4 candles because 40 would have required a fire permit. We sang badly. Daniel closed his eyes before blowing them out, and I wondered what he wished for. I did not ask. Peter insisted on taking a family photograph. He propped his phone against a stack of books and set a timer, then spent the first attempt running across the room too slowly. The picture captured everyone except Peter, whose arm appeared at the edge like evidence of a struggle. For the second attempt, we crowded together near the patio doors. I moved toward the side automatically. Daniel touched my elbow. "Stand here," he said. He made space beside him. Elise stood on his other side. Ruth and Marjorie argued about height behind us. Charles crouched slightly, even though nobody had asked him to. Stephen's eyes were closed when the flash went off. In the photograph, I was not in the middle, I was simply there. No one mentioned the dress. Diane and Charles left first. Peter followed after wrapping 2 slices of cake in foil. Marjorie spent 10 minutes looking for her glasses while they sat on top of her head, then blamed the lighting. Ruth kissed my cheek at the door. "You all right?" she whispered. "Yes, good. I'm leaving before you turn this into a committee meeting." Stephen helped Marjorie down the steps. Ruth followed them to her car. I stayed. Not because the dishes needed washing, not because Daniel expected me to rescue the evening from its own aftermath. I stayed because I wanted another cup of coffee. Elise poured it while Daniel cleared the table. "You don't have to help," he told me when I picked up 2 plates. "I know." He looked at me, then nodded. I carried the plates to the kitchen. The 3 of us moved around one another without choreography. Elise wrapped leftover roast. Daniel loaded the dishwasher badly. I removed a wooden serving spoon he had placed in the bottom rack. "That can't go in there," I said. "It's a spoon. It's wood. The machine washes things. It also ruins things." Elise leaned against the counter. "I'm staying out of this." "You live here," I said. "Choose a side." She considered the spoon. "Vivian's." Daniel removed it. "Betrayal in my own home." "Marriage is hard," Elise said. For a moment, the room felt almost easy. Then I looked at the place near the counter where I had stood with the garment bags. Daniel followed my eyes. He knew. "I saw the dress when you arrived," he said. "I noticed. I was afraid you were wearing it for me." "Partly." He absorbed that. "I didn't want it to be entirely for you," I continued. "Ruth told me if I wore it as a test, I'd spend the whole evening watching your face. She was right. She occasionally is. We don't encourage her." He set a plate into the dishwasher. "Did I pass?" I looked at him. The question was light, but the old hunger sat beneath it. "Tell me I did well. Tell me the bad thing is over. Tell me I'm safe again." "This wasn't a test," I said. He nodded slowly. "You opened the door," I added. "You told me you were glad I came. That mattered. I was glad, I know." Elise picked up the wooden spoon and dried it with a towel. "I was scared of the dress too," she said. "You already told me." "I know. Tonight when I saw you, I realized I still wanted to say something about it. That it was brave, or symbolic, or that I was glad you wore it. But it's a dress. Yes." She smiled. "A beautiful dress. You're allowed to think that. And I'm allowed not to? You always were." Her smile disappeared. That would have been useful to understand last year. Yes. Daniel closed the dishwasher but did not start it. I wish I could change that day, he said. I touched the bare place on my ring finger. So do I. I know wishing doesn't help. Not much. He looked toward Frank's photograph by the patio door. Dad would have liked tonight. He would have overcooked the roast. He always overcooked it. He believed pink meat was a personal threat. Daniel laughed. Then he became quiet. Are you going to put your ring back on? He asked. The question did not offend me. Maybe because he asked instead of interpreting. I don't think so. Because of the wedding? Not exactly. I looked at Frank's photograph. I kept wearing it because I thought taking it off meant I had stopped being his wife. Then I took it off on your wedding day because I realized I had spent 6 years protecting the shape of a family that no longer existed. Daniel's face tightened. That sounds like I took something else from you. No, you forced me to look at it. That is not the same thing. Do you miss wearing it? Sometimes. Do you feel guilty? Sometimes? He nodded, as if accepting that some answers did not need repair. Elise started the dishwasher. I finished my coffee at the kitchen table while they put away the leftovers. When I stood to leave, Daniel brought my coat. At the door, he said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking." He walked me to my car. The night had cooled, and the blue silk was thin beneath my coat. Patio lights glowed behind him. Through the window, I could see Elise carrying glasses into the kitchen. "Are we having coffee next Saturday?" Daniel asked. "If you want, I do." I opened the car door, then stopped. "I'm making dinner Sunday," I said. His expression changed, but he kept the relief from becoming entitlement. "Would you like us to come?" "Yes, 5 o'clock. Can we bring anything? A salad? What kind?" "A real one." He smiled. "I know." I got into the car. Daniel stepped back from the curb. He did not wait for me to promise that everything was fixed. He did not ask whether Sunday dinner meant the old arrangement had returned. I drove home in the blue dress, carrying no garment bag and leaving no part of myself behind.